Second. All right, everybody, welcome. It is November 3rd, 2024. Welcome to the Geekdom101 Super Magic Show. I hope you're having a great Sunday. Thank you for being here with me today. And today we have a loaded show. Lots to talk about here. We're going to talk about 40 years of Dragon Ball. Why? Because the Dragon Ball manga began November of 1984, 40 years ago, and I've got just the right person to talk about the manga all the way through with me. We're not going to talk about every chapter, but you'll see. Anyways, and we're going to talk about Daima episode 4. Obviously, make sure that you leave your if you have questions, drop them. Super chats always get priority. Happy to answer your questions. And we're also going to be discussing sort of modern Dragon Ball, meaning Daima and Super, comparing it to the old stuff, because Dragon Ball is 40 years old, but a lot of things have changed. You know, originally, we're talking about a manga that was written by one man, illustrated by one man, with some editors putting their input in. And now we have a series that has a lot of different people involved in the creation of it. You got Toyotaro, you've got Akio, you've got several people involved. So we're going to discuss sort of that and how things go. So again, I hope you're having a good day. Let me introduce my co-host for this edition of the Super Magic Show, episode 5. He is known as, he's an OG Dragon Ball veteran, somebody who predates even the Geekdom101 era of YouTube, dissecting and analyzing Dragon Ball and explaining things on Dragon Ball before I ever existed. Not in the world, just on YouTube. And I would say a Dragon Ball historian. I would consider them that. So please welcome Lance from Lance, a.k.a. Mr. Fusion. Yo!
Hello. Oh, I thought we were here to talk about every single chapter. We're not doing that?
You've already done that. I'm not going to drag you all the way back to start that over again.
Oh, it only took me 10 years. I'm sure we can knock it out in a few minutes.
I'm sure we can summarize the entire manga. All right, here's the entire manga. Kid meets girl, fights a bunch of people, the end. That's it. That's the story. Collect stuff, right? That's
and
about
they
it, right?
say Dragon Ball's not known for its story.
That's what they say. That's what they say. And people who say that, they're not known for their intellect, but we'll leave it at that. So welcome, Lance. I'm so happy you're here. Guys, if you are new to the channel, or if you don't remember, I have done collaborations with Lance Mystery Fusion. The biggest video we did, which blew up surprisingly, like not right away, but it took some time, was the Does Goku Really Care About Bardock video, which is funny because years later, Toyotaro writes a storyline with Toriyama about Goku hearing Bardock's voice in a scouter and sort of like, he sort of cares, but not really. It made that video even more, I guess, infamous. But if you don't know Lance, check out Mystery Fusion. There's going to be a link in the description for Lance's channel. And what I would like you to do is Lance's magnum opus is Dragon Ball Dissection. Lance mentioned just a minute ago, took him 10 years. He has covered the entirety of the manga from the very beginning 40 years ago all the way to the end of the manga and the different animes, comparing them. And the thing about Dragon Ball Dissection that I like is that, and this is kind of difficult on YouTube sometimes, but even though you clearly love Dragon Ball and it's funny to me because one of the last times I saw you when you lived here, we played Budokai 2 at your house. And I think people don't even know that you never talk about that, right? And that's okay. But
I never talk about playing video games with you, or I never talk about playing Dragon Ball video games, or
oh yes, the answer is yes. But here's the thing, because you don't really cover them that much, except for you did cover the Playdia game, and you did it. So there's 2 videos you've done that I can't do anymore. And that is the video about Dragon Ball Minus and the video about the plan to eradicate the Playdia game, because I watch those videos, right? And usually when I have an idea for a topic or an opinion, I will do my own version. Like if, there's a million videos about breaking down characters and stuff like that. But when I watched your Dragon Ball Minus and your Playdia Dragon Ball game breakdown, I can't do the video because everything I was going to say, you already said it and you said it better than me. So I remember I put in the community tab and I was like, listen, I can't say anything that Lance didn't already say. So check it out. But yeah, check out Dragon Ball Dissection. Now Lance is in the middle of GT.
Near the end of GT. It's bearing down on us in just maybe about another month or so.
You're wrapping it up this December. GT, I mean.
That it would appear to be so, yes. I hope I have enough content to last me to the end of the year. I think I do. I think it's going to be a perfect cutoff.
But we did have a discussion right recently about what's next, because there were a couple of different, and I know you haven't figured this out yet. There were a couple of different things that you haven't figured out yet, because a lot of people want you to cover Super, the manga, and maybe the anime. I know you're not really sure about that. There's obviously recent movies, and you're doing Daima reviews every week. I do hope you stick around because there's more to come in the future. That sounds like another YouTuber. Anyways, but Dragon Ball Dissection, you clearly love Dragon Ball, and unlike a lot of people, I know you relatively well, and you actually know me relatively well IRL. And even though you love it, you still break down its flaws because it's not a perfect series. And the way you do it, it's not disrespectful to Toriyama, in my opinion. It's more so just kind of analyzing it. One of the things that frustrates me as a content creator is when I say something critical about Super, and this happened all throughout my time here. Oh, you're a hater, dog. You're hating on Super. This dude's a hater. He hates Super. I just said this arc wasn't that great. And then if I say something nice about Super, look at this fanboy sucking off Toriyama. You can't win. You just can't win with some people. But in your case, I've never felt like you've looked at things in a way where the criticism has ruined your experience. It's not like you can't sit down and watch the Majin Buu saga and get enjoyment out of it. But I'm going to let you talk about that.
Well, I think that's a really good thing to bring up, because I think it's always good to have some nuanced discussions and to turn the temperature down and to never be as reductive as, you think it's great, therefore you are filleting the author, as you so colorfully said, or I don't like this, therefore you were hating on the series. This, to borrow the term from my own series, dissecting media is fun for me. That's how I celebrate things that I'm interested in. If anything that I watch or anything that I read, I'm immediately just going, okay, what did I like about this and why? And what did I not like about this and why? And if I walk away from something and don't care to think about it at all, that's probably a far more damning indictment of it than something that I'm going to spend years of my life breaking apart and trying to figure out exactly what makes it tick. I think everybody is different, obviously. Some people really just like to, enjoy things uncritically, and that's perfectly fine. But for me, criticism is why I enjoy storytelling.
Right. No, and that's the thing is, recently, I'll give people a more recent example. During Dragon Ball Daima, because I was in your Discord today and I had a conversation with them, and I think they thought that it was going to be one of those things where I was going to praise Daima and you were going to criticize it, when that's not the case at all, because your criticisms of Daima already in the first 3 episodes was that it was the writing felt like Toriyama was basically giving Toei little bullet points of that you would use in a guidebook. Like the characters would just say, oh, well, the volcano went off over there and that's why the air's bad. And it just kind of felt like it wasn't proper storytelling. And I agree with you, which is why after I saw episode 4, which I thought was episode 4 was perfect, because the first half of that episode was lore building and also foreshadowing, because that fusion bug is clearly, we're going to talk about that later, that fusion bug and that revive bug are clearly going to be used later. You can't even, you're an idiot if you think otherwise.
Well, I mean, if you've heard of Chekhov's gun, this is clearly Chekhov's bug. You don't put a loaded fusion bug on the mantelpiece if you're not going to put your characters together in some weird hybrid character.
Do you remember the first time you ever told me about Chekhov's gun? Do you remember that conversation?
I remember the episode of Dragon Ball Dissection where I brought it up, which was about the Serpentine Road and how in the manga the ogre tells Goku not to be careful not to fall off or you'll end up in hell, and then he just runs along the road and nothing ever happens to him in that version. And it took the TV series to add stories to that of him actually doing that. Which I assume it was related to that, or was there a different story where I told you talk about Chekhov's gun? Was it Star Trek related? I'm
getting there. We were on the phone and you brought up Chekhov's gun, and I go, "What episode of Star Trek was that?" I swear to God, that's what I thought you were talking about.
I stepped all over your punchline. I'm sorry.
No, it wasn't even a punchline. This really happened. Because I didn't know what the fuck Chekhov's gun was. I never knew that. I know that you and Gabby, you guys have these television terms that I've never heard of before, maybe because I'm an immigrant or just I never looked into it, and I learned from y'all. I don't know if you guys know this about Lance, if it was feasible financially, could do an entire dissection on every sitcom in history and have content for the next 100 years, including the ones he's never seen before. We've had hours-long conversations where you've broken down the history of the Cosby Show and all the spinoffs, and I'm just like, why aren't you doing videos about this? But I don't know if there's even an audience for that. There probably is somewhere.
I don't tend to talk about the Cosby Show much anymore, but that's a different story.
That's a different reason, yeah.
But I guess I probably now we're putting the cart before the horse, because just in case people don't know, probably should explain Chekhov's gun in the first place. It's named after the playwright Anton Chekhov, who supposedly had said that it's basically a sort of axiom about storytelling, where there is a sort of conservation of detail, where it's like when you take the time to show something off, that's because it's going to mean something later on. And the way he described that was, if in your play, because it started as a stage term, if in the first act there is a gun hanging on the mantle, in the third act that gun will be fired.
It's basically foreshadowing.
You don't put things into your story if there's no reason to have them there.
And I think I've never taken a storytelling class, but I have friends who have, and that's something that's brought up a lot. Like they always talk about great scripts. In the first act, you have something, you don't have to do this, but usually, and then the third act, you pay it off. I'm going to get the super chats here in a minute, but there's a question I wanted to answer briefly about Chekhov's gun from Dragon Slayer. He says, what is Chekhov's gun versus a red herring? A red herring is kind of like the opposite of Chekhov's gun, where you're meant to think something and then boom. For example, the fusion bug. People are going to assume, and I understand why, we're going to see Vegeta, or we'll see Goku and Piccolo, or even like maybe Gloria and Pansy, or some new character fuse. Or they're going to assume it's just going to be Vegeta, when what if the villains use one? Or what if I've got this joke, Lance, that so you remember, here's the Chekhov's gun. Remember how in episode 4 of Daima, the Supreme Kai's like, I don't really like eating bugs? Here's my speculation. He's going to start eating the revived bugs and like them. They're going to, after the story's over, they're going to go back to Earth. He's going to go to Kibito and say, these bugs are really good. And then Kibito's going to say, which one's this one? Try it. Then they refuse again. And that's how they end up being fused again for Super. Because of one contradiction, folks, now Super and Daima can't possibly be canon. That's what the fandom says. Even though the original manga has a ton of contradictions, which you've brought up before, and so have I. But people in the fandom sometimes think that if there's one plot hole, all of a sudden that it doesn't fit. When there's always been plot holes, I don't think this is a plot hole, though. Clearly, Toriyama is going to have Supreme Kai and Kibito refuse, even if it's off screen, you know?
Well, it's too early for me to make any kind of, I'm not going to make a prediction on that. I'm sure there are ways to tie that up. I did think that was a really good question. And I like that person's tying those things together, because yeah, if a Chekhov's gun is sort of setting something up to play it straight, as in here's a thing, here's it being paid off. A red herring is kind of an intentional subversion of that, where you're still introducing something for a narrative purpose, but that purpose is to sort of turn the tables on the audience.
I guess you call it a swerve.
What's that?
Is it like a swerve? Is another word for it, or a bait and switch?
You can call it that. I don't know. I always think, as a child of the late 80s, early 90s, I always think of the character from a pup named Scooby-Doo, named Red Herring.
Red Herring.
It was this bully character that Fred always thought was the person behind whatever caper they were investigating that week, but of course he never was. He was a literal red herring as far as Freddy was concerned.
Yeah, and actually, the first time I ever heard the term red herring, it was in elementary school. Remember, folks, English was not my first language. My second language, Spanish, my first language. And I thought it said red her-ring, and like a red ring. And then somebody explained to me that's not what it was. But I mean, it's just being an immigrant. Let's get to these super chats before we continue our conversation. So Xavier says, happy 40th birthday to the Dragon Ball franchise. Yeah, it's this month. This month, yes. Red,
isn't it?
Huh?
It's the 20th. Isn't it the 20th? November 20th? Is that right?
The 20th, which happens to be the same day that I closed on my house in 2019. And one of my ex's birthdays on the 20th. So the 20th, November 20th always has a weird connection with me. Red Bluebird, not Herring, says, I'm curious, would you agree Dragon Ball forms need more shape nowadays? As in, instead of just a color change, they need a defining silhouette.
I like his hat, by the way. I just...
Oh, you have it. You have it.
You asked me to, so I couldn't think of a better transition into that.
Peek behind the curtain. I have my other hat, this is my other hat, right? And this is more matching his letter, but you've got the correct shape or whatever.
So we need a fusion. We need some sort of merging
bug
candy.
And you can't eat that because you're vegetarian, so forget it.
That's right. I don't merge with bugs.
The other day when you were on Twitter saying you love fish, I was going to reply back and say, I've been to sushi places with you many times, and I've never seen you eat fish.
No, I love that fish. The one in episode 4 of Daima with the really sarcastic looking eyes. Why is this Goku kid drinking my water? I love that fish.
I love that fish too. What do you think about Warp Sama? Isn't it so Toriyama that he invents a giant fish that has like a I call it the world between realms inside of his stomach, and then he shits you out of his ass?
That is certainly a fun way of looking at that. But yeah, there are a lot of fish, and there are a lot of fish in this show. Thanks for all the fish, Toriyama.
Also, in your review, I want to say you were 100% correct. There is a place in Dr. Slump called the Coffee Pot, and that's the place where Senbei hangs out when he's not at home with his wife or his soon-to-be wife, depending on what part of the series you're in, and it is shaped like a giant coffee pot. And there's an alien in Dr. Slump whose head is literally an ass. Literally an ass. So many people in the chat, the majority have probably never read or watched Dr. Slump. You need to. It's totally different from Dragon Ball, except for the humor.
Well, I feel like we're dragging out this question.
Let's get to this question. Yeah, he says. So
we've been having too much fun.
Yeah, no, but we're here to have a good time. So I don't know about Lance, but I think Lance and I have had this conversation before. Personally, I'm tired of new forms. I think the series should go back to developing the characters as martial artists. I thought Dragon Ball Super dragged out the Ultra Instinct because he mastered it like 4 times, it seems. It certainly feels that way. Oh, well, he mastered it in Jiren. No, he mastered it in Moro. And then we says, no. There's another level. And then I'm sitting there thinking to myself, you're making it up as you go along, aren't you? Which is clearly what's going on. I am tired of new forms. That being said, if you're going to introduce a new form, either give it to a character that's not Goku or do something different with it. I've already talked about this before. Daima, I'm not going to go into details about Daima, but there is something else coming, and that's all I'll say. So how do you feel about this? The color change, defining silhouette. What do you think about this question?
Well, first of all, I'm really glad you went first, because I think it always terrifies me to come into somebody's space with the same answer, which is that, frankly, I'm just kind of tired of new transformations in general. And I feel like if I say that, I'm going to be told, oh, you're being a killjoy, or you don't understand what Dragon Ball is about. But I don't know, it's been 30 plus years of this, and it's like the rose is wilting a little bit, or the rosé is wilting, or the blue is wilting, or something is wilting. But I can certainly point to individual transformations. I thought that Super Saiyan God was good. I mean, I enjoyed the way it looked and how it contrasted from what existed at the time. But this was over 10 years ago now. But for I definitely think at this point, I think there needs to be a bit more of a shape, as you say, something to differentiate it. It is. I have gotten lost. I've gotten lost in this in the Super era of just how many different versions there are. The God and the Blue and the Rosé and the Beast and the Ultra Instinct and it's like how many different times can you just basically change someone's color or change someone's aura? Maybe give them slightly different eyes. There are only so many times you can go back to that well. So I'm not like a big figure collector myself anyway, but I certainly am not. I would not be dipping back into the well to buy all these figures based on 37 different types of hair colors.
Yeah, I mean, I like the creativity of like Gohan Beast was a little bit different, but it wasn't that different. The hair was really goofy. But
I was called Last House Gohan because it reminds me of that. You know what I'm talking about? That
studio Last House.
Yeah, the Last House Studio, one of the animation studios on Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball GT, which sort of took a nosedive towards the latter half of Dragon Ball Z. And the first, Goku becomes a Super Saiyan at the end of an episode, 95. And then the very next episode, where he actually gets to show it off. That was animated
Yep.
by Last House, and yes, he has this giant, like there's this camera tilt of like going up his body, and like his hair is like 3 feet tall in this one shot. And so the second I saw Beast Gohan, I was like, oh, it's Last House. That's what it's always going to remind me of.
I think the best way for people to get a comparison is look at Goku versus Frieza from Dragon Ball Z 96, and then look at Goku versus 19 from Dragon Ball Z 128, I think it is. And you will quickly like see, okay, this is a different design slightly. Xavier says Budokai Tenkaichi 2 had the greatest BGM. Maybe. It's tough to say because look, I know Kenji Yamamoto is a plagiarist. I've had this discussion with Juan before, but damn, he's good. I mean, look, listen, Battle Point Unlimited. I get it. It copied some German band. I get it. I'm not even saying that's right. That's a fucking banger. Lance, did you know that I have dub fans that I have shown 122 in Japanese, and when they hear Battle Point Unlimited, it's like they discover God. They're like Uchi, for example. Uchi was like, "Is this how it is?" I'm like, and I'm sitting there trying to pull my. What have I been telling you? And so recently, I've been streaming Dragon Ball in Japanese on Twitch, and there's a lot of people who grew up with the dub. This is their first time seeing it in Japanese. And it's like almost like, and it's the same thing that I experienced in the 90s, and I'm sure you did too, where it's like, oh, this is how it's supposed to be. You know?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about the BGM and the whole thing that I just brought up to you?
Well, this is something that you kind of brought up a little bit ago. You were saying that I don't really talk about the video games, and that's because I don't really play them all that much. I own the first 3 Budokai games that I got. I got them when I was a teenager in college. The time that you and I played, whenever that was, I think 2018 maybe. I haven't touched any of those games since then, and I never got as far as these. So I have no idea.
Well,
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, so I'll probably do I'm doing a podcast with Juan about the music of Dragon Ball. We're going to analyze like all of it, like Kikuchi, Falconer, everyone's going to we're the pros and the cons. Xavier says shills and fangirls forgot criticism isn't hate. Well, it's not just fangirls, it's also fanboys. A lot of people don't understand that. And look, there's Uchi. He's in the chat right now. Look, he's there right now. This is the guy who I showed 122. This dude right here, and he was like flipping out because all he's used to is the fucking Falconer, nah, man. And I'm like, you want to hear good techno? This is good techno. And then it hit him. So I want to talk to you about, and this is something that, because you and I get real nerdy on these things, I want to talk a little bit about this whole like Dragon Ball culture thing, because one of the things that I hate when I was promoting this podcast, before I did, I promoted your recent video, which I want everybody to check out, where Lance goes into the different attack names from Japanese to English. So he'll talk about the Kaioken being translated as, you know, the fist of the Kaio, but then in the super subs, it's King Kai fist, Kaioken. And the thing that I want people to understand, and I want people to really understand this, is that when it comes to like the Japanese versus the English and stuff like that, it's not about dub versus sub. It's not about being a weeaboo. It's not about any of that stuff. It's the fact that when you watch an English dub that is censored and homogenized and Americanized, in many ways, and this is not, I don't think this is like necessarily something that I'm not mad about this, even though I do get mad about this. It is kind of disrespectful to the original culture. And a lot of that, you know, even because another thing Lance has on Mystery Fusion's channel, check it out, by the way, is he compares Mighty Morphin Power Rangers to Jew Ranger. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, teenagers with attitude, we're going to go to Ernie's and sip some energy drinks and do karate, versus ancient warrior dinosaur gods facing off against a witch who sold her soul to the devil. Because what happens is in the 90s, there was, and this is something Chris Sabat confirmed when I interviewed him in 2016, there was a lot of controversy about gods and demons in American media. Satanic Panic had already passed, but kids shows, kami literally means God. And the word demon was never used in the original Dragon Ball dub, except maybe like to refer, maybe once or twice. But you've got like Saiyajin, which Jin is the suffix that represents a group of people, a civilization, a race. And then you've got Majin. And so you and I were probably the only Dragon Ball Daima reviewers on this whole platform that said Majin can be used to represent a lot of different demons because it literally means demon person. But when they dubbed it, it wasn't Saiyajin, it was Saiyan. And then with the Majin, they could have said, what are they going to say? Main? Like, it doesn't make sense. They could have called them Demon Boo, but the soccer moms and the fundamentalist Christian, and we can't have demons. Oh. So they just called it Majin because it sounds cool. So what I want people to understand is, because I hate when people say that, and this, I get this, and you've gotten this before, that we are like too, like, I want to say Dragon Ball purist, but they say that we're elitist, and that's not it at all. It's more about respect. Now, you take it to a different level because you say Toriyama Akira, and I say Akira Toriyama, and the reason for that is because in Japan, they say surnames first. But people are so weird about this because all Lance is doing is just paying respect to the culture that created this shit. Dragon Ball Z wasn't made in Texas. I'm sorry, I hate to break it to you. It wasn't even aimed at Americans. So people like myself and Lance and even Jordan, we do these videos explaining like, hey, the reason why this is important is because if you don't understand what this is, you're not going to understand the series. Just like Majin Buu being a demon, like, and so if you don't know anything, you're gonna watch Daima, and episode 1, Goma's like, we must. He says something like, we must control the Majin, and immediately a dub fan's like, oh, there's a bunch of Boos running around, and that's not it. So you guys have to understand, and I think this audience does for the most part, that it's the dub and the it's not just the dub, it's also the translation issues from English to Japanese. I think a lot of people just don't understand that they're two different languages and that sometimes it's not a one and done answer. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I want to say I don't have any kind of axe to grind. I don't personally think that it's disrespectful to Toriyama or to Toei or whatever to be a fan of any kind of reversioning. At the end of the day, this is a comic book series and animated television series for children, and it's fun, and we're having fun. And as long as you're having fun, then that's all great. I went through my sort of angry know-it-all elitist phase like 25 years ago.
We all did.
When I cover the original version in Dragon Ball Dissection, it's more just because that's the Dragon Ball that I know. It's the Dragon Ball that I engage with. I have not followed any of the dubs since 2000, really, and that's the fandom that I want to share with people and especially because on YouTube we are a much more nowadays. In the 90s, in the mid 90s, it was a very different place. The internet was. YouTube was not even a thing. But we are very much a minority. There aren't a lot of clubhouses for people to talk about where they say Saya instead of Seiya or Kuririn or Tenshinhan or whatever. And so that's I just share what it is that I know. And definitely there are a lot of they've certainly gotten better in the past couple of decades. But yes, especially in that, late 90s syndicated Saban, Toonami, Dragon Ball Z era. They were very different productions, very, very different story beats. The very general premise definitely the same, but a lot of things were changed, and that doesn't necessarily. I certainly prefer the original Japanese, but I'm certainly not going to say, and I never say in Dragon Ball Dissection, that if you like the dub, that you were wrong. I generally try to avoid talking about it in general, just so I don't start, fights with people. It's interesting that you bring up the Eastern name order thing, because this is something I find kind of fascinating. Yeah, in a lot of Asian cultures, the family name comes first, followed by the given name. That's true in a lot of different countries, and it's really only when it comes to Japanese that we here in the West try to flip that order, be it in real life or in fiction. I mean, just to use a Dragon Ball example, Son Goku. I've never seen anybody advocate, oh, that needs to be flipped to Western order. Like, Son is his family name. His grandfather's name was Son. His kids are named Son Gohan, Son Goten, and that's just accepted. The Bajorans in Star Trek have the same thing. Ensign Ro Laren, Ensign Ro, Major Kira Nerys, Major Kira. And then it's the same thing with other cultures in real life. Who's the president of North Korea?
Kim Jong-un or Kim Jong? I can never pronounce his name right.
It's Kim Jong-un. President
Kim Jong-un.
Kim. President Kim. Kim is
right.
his family name, and the same thing in China. President Xi Jinping. President Xi. So we don't get all twisted, and we don't get angry if someone is using their family names first in those cultures. For some reason, we do it in Japanese, and I'm almost certain that people in Japan don't mind it. They find it a fun little exotic thing, but that's not how they refer to themselves in their own personal lives. And so I'm just like, yeah, might as well just call them what they would call themselves. It's not a big thing. I'm not trying to think that I'm better than anybody. That's just like, oh, when I realized, oh, that's how they do it. Okay, well, I guess I'll do that then. Well,
it's funny because I actually have a real world example of sort of the opposite of that, because in Pride, so I love MMA and I love pro wrestling. In Japanese wrestling, if you watch a Japanese wrestling match, when they introduce the Japanese wrestler, for example, Mitsuharu Misawa, that's his name is Mitsuharu Misawa. Misawa is his last name, but they introduce him as Misawa Mitsuharu, and everybody goes nuts. Mm-hmm. When Stan Hansen, who's from Texas, wrestles in Japan, they don't call him Hansen Stan. They say Stan Hansen.
You're right. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And same thing with Pride. If you watch Pride fighting, when they bring out a Japanese fighter, they call him surname first name last, or whatever. And then the foreigner, the American, like when Mark Coleman's out there, Mark Coleman, they never. So if they flip it for us, I find it actually annoys me how pedantic people are, because I think what happens is they think that you and I and others are being pedantic by not using dub names, when in reality, they're being pedantic for not understanding that it's the right way. For the best example is with the word Saiyan. You still use it. I use it in my Dragon Ball in-depths, but not in my regular videos, because I got so sick of people saying, why are you pronouncing it like that? And the thing that's weird about that is, let's say I was a fan of the dub, and I go on YouTube and I hear somebody say Saiyan, I'm going to say, why are they pronouncing it like that? And I'm going to look into it and say, oh, I see. Mm-hmm. But in their heads, they just automatically assume, well, you're wrong. And I'll never forget this. This is legendary for me. In 2015, I did a video about the history of Frieza. I went into all this fucking like cool lore and backstory. And then I referred to them as Saiyans. All of a sudden, the entire video was incredibly knowledgeable. You are so knowledgeable about Dragon Ball. But why do you pronounce Saiyan wrong? And it's like, yeah, I know all this shit that nobody else does. And of course, others know it, but I'm looking at it from their perspective. but yet I pronounce it weird. Don't you think that maybe there's a reason for that? And so it just becomes a thing. And that's something I want to tell everybody for Dragon Ball Dissection. Lance sticks to the Japanese pronunciations for things. In fact, Bulma is the big one because you refer to her as Bluma. But in the very first episode of Dissection, Lance takes time to explain that. Like, so if you're watching Dissection, you start with like the 5th episode, which people fucking start with Z and never see what happened before. So it's kind of, you can't start with Empire Strikes Back. You have to start with 1977 Star Wars. You can't start with the Saiyan saga. You got to go back to Pilaf. If you start at the beginning, you're going to be like, oh, so if he's going to call her Bluma for the entire series of the video series, I'm not going to be surprised. And that's one of the issues that we've run into for the past few years is too many fans. And it's not their fault necessarily. I am not blaming anybody for this because you could fault the dub to a degree, but also the video games ignore everything before Raditz. And because of that, for years and years and years, fans have been programmed to think that everything before Raditz is all bullshit. It's all comedy. It's all a comedic prequel when there's very, very violent and crazy shit that happens in original Dragon Ball. And there's a lot more nudity and a lot more. So like this, and it's because the game's Raditz taboo, Raditz taboo, Raditz taboo. And when we look at like the Saiyan saga, the Saiyan arc, or the Vegeta saga, whatever you want to call it, it's not the first story arc of Dragon Ball Z because there is no Dragon Ball Z in Toriyama's head when it comes to the manga. It's actually the 8th arc of Dragon Ball when you count the tournament to separate. Right? It's 8th arc, 7th or 8th.
It's the 7th for me, but that depends on whether or not you separate Uranai Baba out as an own story arc, which I think you do. I don't. So
no, I do. I do, but not fully, because in my rewatch of Baba, I said, because Bora was killed by Tao Pai Pai and Red Ribbon and resurrected at the end, that's the end of the Red Ribbon arc. I actually count Baba as being the Red Ribbon arc, but the reason why I didn't is because a lot of people don't, so I just kind of went with the, I went with the crowd.
But I do want to take a second to sort of try to meet people where they are, because again, I don't want any of this to come across as an elitist thing or telling people how to have fun.
Right, and that's the point of this whole conversation.
Yeah, because like if you have, like, most people don't, necessarily dive deep into the shows that they watch or the things that they read. You read it and you enjoy it, and you don't have to like learn literally everything about it. And it's, doing something that's from a different culture adds a different layer, because you're always going to be missing something if you don't understand the language. But it's like, if you were to like be talking about, like, if you've only seen the dub if you were a Star Wars fan and you sat down to someone's YouTube video and they started talking about Luke Walker Sky, they would understandably be going, why are you saying it that way?
Right.
And so, yeah, if
or Luke Starkiller, if you're really sexy.
If you've been a fan of Dragon Ball for 20 years and everybody's always called Saiyan, then yeah, you're gonna be thrown by that. It's natural. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying with that being your frame of reference. That's what you know. Agree. And why would you ever have to question that?
That's why I play ball with them.
Question it. I do agree with you, though, that it is my sort of predilection that if I were to run into something where that maybe pause and go, wait, what is that? Why is that? My instinct is to try to look it up out, rather than to immediately go to the keyboard and go, rah, 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 rah. So I agree with you. I don't like that mindset.
Thank you.
And my philosophy is always been, again, I'm just trying to make a space to talk about the Dragon Ball that I care about. And if you want to come into that world, then I'm definitely happy to have you. But my thing is, I never go into somebody else's Dragon Ball video and say it's not Krillin, and like
I never do that. Jokingly, I do. Yeah.
So it's like I always say, don't knock down my clubhouse door, and expect to be accommodated exactly how you want to be, because this is my space. And I do want to add in one little clarification, just because I'm sure people might be a little bit thrown by this. it's not necessarily that I am sticking straight to Japanese romanizations. In Dragon Ball Dissection, I don't say Vegeta, I don't say Seru, I don't say Bulma.
Kasu.
Yeah, I mean, which I again, no, I don't. There's no shade from me if you do that. Those are literally their names.
I do that jokingly all the time, like, you know, just to fuck around.
But as I say in a lot of my Dragon Ball name videos, a lot of Dragon Ball names do come from words in other languages, usually English. And sometimes if you play that language telephone game, if you were a small up-and-coming dubbing studio in the mid-90s, like Funimation was at the time, you might see like a Torangsu, they got that one right, obviously, and not necessarily, but just an example. But look at those combinations of Japanese sounds and not realize, oh, this is an English word. And so you did end up with certain names just being completely, changed. You look at, things like Bardock's right-hand man in the Bardock special, whose name was Toma, which is a shortening of tomato because they're all vegetables. But
even though that's supposed to be a fruit.
Biologically, it's a fruit. Culinary, it's a vegetable is a culinary term. So it's both.
Maybe he's half Sephorian. Oh, I'm sorry, Tuffle. Go ahead.
But in the dub, they rename him to Tora, which completely loses that meaning behind it. So even in, because you use that example because it's always the example you use is always the one that people like to bring up with me. But yes, Bluma is what I call the blue or purple haired girl who it makes the Dragon Radar, as opposed to Bulma. That's because she was named for bloomers. And yes, it is usually written on her clothes as Bulma. There actually is a much more recent Toriyama drawing where you can't see the entire thing on her dress, but it is BLOOM something on there. So it seems that this is from 2007. He made this image. I would run and get my book, but I don't feel like pulling it out right now. But it's like, yeah, there was seemingly an English pun in that name. And because he wasn't a native English speaker, it seems like it might have come out Bulma, possibly. So I wasn't the first person to use Bluma. I think I might be like the most infamous person at this point. But again, like,
because you're still using it, and that's okay.
I am still using it. But most of the name translations or name renderings that I use, you would find in Funimation's released DVDs, like the Dragon boxes behind me, or in the Viz subtitled, the Viz translation of the manga. A lot of people do tend to, those sources do tend to agree a lot. So it's not like, oh, I have to keep things, 100% Romanized. It's just, oh, there might have been, I'm just going to say it, a better way to have translated certain things. But obviously, translation is an art, not a science. And it's always,
amen.
You'll see things that the subtitles in Viz do diverge on, and sometimes one is more right than the other. But a lot of times you can suss out a logic behind either one of them, which is what I try to have fun doing in my Dragon Ball names videos. Just not like making a no judgment zone, really, but just saying, this is what they did here. This makes some sense. I like this one a bit better. This one was completely off for some reason. And we just try to talk about it just so people will know, things you might not be exposed to if you're only in this one corner of the fandom. And so hopefully everybody can have a good time. And as long as we all know who we're talking about, then, we don't have to act like we're these two separate species who can never get along. Like, we're all Dragon Ball fans at the end of the day, and that's really all that matters.
And the thing is, too, I think it also comes down to trust. Like, people should, I understand, look, there's a lot of trash YouTubers. There's a lot of people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. That's just the truth. And you have to trust at least people like Lance and I, we do our homework. It's look, I'm not trying to compare it to a religion, but I'm going to use a religious comparison. When you read the Bible, you can read it in English, but a lot of the biblical scholars will say, yeah, but if you read it in Hebrew or in the Greek, these words have different meanings. A lot of my Muslim friends will say, you can read the Quran, but if you read it in the original Arabic, it's a different flow. And that's the thing about language, especially non-Latin languages like the Asian languages or the Arabic languages, that they're so different. They don't even have the same alphabet, you know? And so when you have languages like that, there's Vegeta, there's Vejita, there's Beejita, and then there's the katakana and the con. There's literally like 7 different ways to say the word Vegeta. And then but the problem is people have to understand that it's not that you and I are wrong or even that they're wrong. There's a lot of ways to say Vegeta or to spell it. That is.
It's just that Japanese and English are very, very different languages from each other.
Very different.
They have different phonemes than we do. So when they're trying to make a character based off of a pun of the word vegetable, they don't necessarily have those same sounds.
It's a different alphabet.
That's how you end up with a Vegeta instead of V. So you have elements like that where it's taking this root word, transitioning it into a language with different sounds, different writing systems, and then taking it back into English and trying to figure out what it was trying to be and how much you want to put it back, and what especially since a lot of them are not the actual word but puns of it. I think I talked about this when I covered Vegeta on my second names video, which is that it's Vegeta or Vegeta is not just a shortening of Vegetabaru, which is their approximation of vegetable. There's also an elongated E sound in there. It's Vegeta, not Vegeta.
Same thing with
and that's why we say Vegeta and not Vegeta. And so you could argue that maybe it should have a double E in there. You could. I don't. But that would get across that same kind. So again, there are all kinds of nuances to this conversation.
Yeah, it's a very, and what I'm trying to get people to understand is it's not easy to translate. I mean, Herms has done entire theses on this shit. It is not easy to translate a language that uses a different alphabet, different syllables, while also incorporating English words into it. Vegeta, like you said in your recent video, all his attacks are in English. And I'm going to give you a weeaboo moment that only Lance will understand. At Kamehacon 1, I wanted Ryo Horikawa to do Final Flash. And when he did Final Flash, he goes, Final Flash! And I sat and I did like this because I'm like, no, that's not what I wanted. I wanted Finaru. But I want the fucking way you did it on the show, motherfucker. I didn't tell him that.
I feel like Horikawa was one of those who because Horikawa is fluent in English.
No, and remember when I interviewed him, I don't know if you were there, and he's like, it was Sailor Spaz and her friend, and he was in the middle, and he's like, you guys say Saiyan, and I go, yeah, we say it wrong. I just fucking,
I was
a different era of my life, bro. I had the gloves off. But yeah, the point is that there's it's difficult. Like, it's not easy because even recently in Daima, I butchered it. We're going to talk about episode 4 in a minute. I butchered it, but the military police that work for Goma, that to have that knowledge, especially if you're under the age of like 20 or whatever, or 30, you might not have that. You have to look into World War II history, then go to Japanese history, tie it into French history. Some of these, and the thing about Toriyama, one of the things that I fucking hate, Lance, and I despise this, is when people say the man is not smart or is lazy. Both of those things are bullshit. This man wrote a weekly manga for 11 years straight with virtually no breaks while helping with video games.
Really for 15 years straight.
Slump.
Dr. Slump.
But he did take a vacation to China in between Slump and Dragon Ball, so that was a little break.
Well, no, I'm glad you brought that up though, because I had to do some research for that as well on Friday because,
Me too.
you know,
Local Herms helped.
Well, actually, I was looking this up before Herms had made his thread. I was like, oh,
no, I mean, for me,
I was trying to put this in my video, and I just knew I'm like, it takes me like several hours even to get this video out. I just know Herms is going to explain this before I get my video out, and sure enough, he beat me by a few hours. But it's like, yeah, when Goku and Kaioshin and Gloria come into the town at the end of the episode, you know, and like there are these people roughing up the villagers. You know, Kaioshin asks who those are, and Gloria in the subtitles says a word that I think I'd seen maybe once before in my life, but I was like, I need to look this up because I'm pretty sure I know what he's referring to.
And I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't sound like what he said. I said the same thing. I was like,
yeah, it didn't sound like what he said either. So it's like my immediate thought was, people are going to watch this and think this is some new Dragon Ball term. You know, it's like it's a Majin, or it's a this, or it's a that, or it's a, you know, it's a name of some sort that Dragon Ball made up. The term they use is gendarmerie,
right.
which is
French.
It is French. It refers to basically military forces being used as police. They are military police. The word that he says in Japanese is Kempei Tai. Or just actually, I thought he just said Kempei. Herm said he said Kempei Tai, but I thought he just said Kempei. Kempei refers to people who are in a Kempei Tai, and that is basically the imperial Japanese version of a gendarmerie. So yeah, during World War II, there was a Kempei Tai who were, you know, some pretty unpleasant people to be around, and after the war ended, they were disbanded and they were charged with war crimes. So basically, the idea is that these are, you know, police or military agents of Goma using their power unjustly to rough up citizens. And wow, I sure had to dig deep on that to even. It's interesting that they even went with that term, because I feel like most people, we don't use that in our day-to-day lives. No. But I learned a lot, and I was excited to learn it. So, but it did require me to have to, well, let's hit pause and let me spend the next 10 minutes figuring out what the heck they're talking about and see if I can find this word and that word. And like, yeah, okay, that makes sense as a translation now that I understand what's going on.
Well, here's the funny thing about that, and I'll give you and everybody a peek behind the curtain here. So about a little over a year ago, when I was first told about Dragon Ball Magic, I was shown a picture of those guys. And when I asked who the fuck they were, because I was only shown a picture of one, I thought it was like one boss demon. I think that they were referred to as the third demon realm militia. And that's why in my review, I referred to them as a militia. That's not necessarily the right term, but so in my head, whenever I think about those guys, that's my first exposure to it, it's third demon realm militia. I think from now on, I'm just going to call them the military police, just because.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you thought that it would have been a better translation choice to have gone with military police, or do you appreciate
not Gestapo
getting to learn all of this stuff? I don't know. Certainly, military police would be more accessible without having to take a break and go to Wikipedia for a while. Military police would get that idea across. It's a perfect translation. But there's also, for me, fun and just going, whoa, what's that? Let's find out. So yeah, what do you think? Would you prefer they just translated it as military police?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Or militia. Military police would be the best thing.
I would think military police. Militia. Well,
it's not the same thing.
It depends on how it's used, but yeah, that could be accurate as well.
Yeah. Joe Salo, Laura, thank you for the donation. Ahmad Canaanite says, hi, is Daima only 20 episodes or is it a bit more? I answer this every week. I do not have a final episode count on Daima. It's going to be roughly around that. It's not going to be as long as Super. It'll be a short Dragon Ball show, but they're packing a lot in, and there may be another longer episode to come because this was originally supposed to be a streaming exclusive show. and I've talked about this before, when Toriyama passed away, Fuji apparently wanted to show it, and they got it. But it's also on Crunchyroll, it's on Netflix, it's on Amazon Prime. It depends on where you live, because not every country has the same settings. But if you have a VPN, you can always access other countries' versions of Netflix and watch it. I would just do Crunchyroll, because even though, like Lance and I are saying, their subtitles are not perfect, they're fine. I like them more than the super subtitles. King Kai Fist, I don't like that. I don't like it. Doesn't sound right. Pablo says, for Lance, what about new anime adaptation of the OG manga? When gonna happen? How should it be on score, fillers, etc.? I think they're trying to ask you if you would like to see a new adaptation of the original Dragon Ball manga anime adaptation from scratch. I have something to say on it, but it's for you.
All right. Well, thank you for asking, Pablo. I hadn't really given it too much thought until now. I certainly have no idea when it's going to happen. I can't believe we're already 15 years out from Dragon Ball Kai trying to refresh the earlier Dragon Ball Z series. It is certainly a very prevalent question right now, because my possibly controversial opinion about the first episode of Daima was that it was too interested in being a demo reel for a remake of Dragon Ball Z than it was about getting going on Dragon Ball Daima. But
yes, but people did like it, like the animation.
That's what I was about to say. For what it was, divorcing that from this is the first impression you want to make of a new series, but just looking at it, like, it's gorgeous. It looked great, and like, okay, if that's what you want to do, if you want to just make a remake of that show, then by all means, have at it. I do wonder. I mean, 15 years. It's been less for the Boo arc, but 15 years is a while. But I do wonder if we're oh my god, 15 years is not that long from 20 years, which is how old Dragon Ball Z was when Dragon Ball Kai started. So we actually are getting close to the point where that might be a relevant thing to talk about.
I will say this, and I've said this before. I think at some point, maybe in 10 years for the 50th anniversary, maybe the 60th, I think someday we will have a new adaptation from scratch, going back to the beginning of chapter 1 of the manga, not like Kai, starting from Goku and Bulma, all the way to the Oob stuff. I think after Nozawa passes away, which I don't want to think about, but it's inevitably going to happen because nobody's immortal except Zamasu and Garlic Jr., and she's not. Whenever we get a new Dragon Ball adaptation from scratch, I think they should bring in the crew from Daima with a new voice cast for everybody. Even though I love the OGs, it's like a new adaptation. Gundam's done it a bunch of times. Hunter did it. Sailor Moon did it.
I was about to say Sailor Moon. Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't had that with Dragon Ball. Granted, it is much longer. Even Sailor Moon was only 200 episodes. And Dragon Ball, I mean, just the 80s to 90s stuff is over 500.
And I think that they should do it with no filler. Like,
yeah, I think that would be the draw of it.
Panel by panel. Maybe a little bit more fighting.
It is interesting though, because I do wonder now, as I've had a few weeks to think about it, if they are setting up this new cast, hoping they can take over the reins for some future project. So we are kind of like, Daima does in a way seem like it's trying it's not like trying too hard, but it is going out of its way to modernize Dragon Ball in a way that Dragon Ball Super did not. Like, there are a lot of stylistic changes that feel more modern, such as the fact that there is no longer a narrated 30-second long next episode preview.
Yes.
It's just they show like 2 seconds of clips with music and
that's it.
Yeah, exactly. And the title,
and
like
the
one word title is so crazy, because like ever since at least around 88, like towards the when Koyama Takao took over as sort of the head writer and Morishi Takozo as the producer of Dragon Ball at the 23rd Budokai arc. Basically, that's when that whole
the idea
of doing those two-part, descriptive title, expounding sentences, and here we go. Those kind of two-part title things that were
Sailor Moon has them too.
Yeah, they do. But basically, from late Dragon Ball through Dragon Ball Z and GT, the original Funimation dub era did not carry those over most of the time, almost never. But they continued in Dragon Ball Kai, and they carried it over then into the dub, and then Dragon Ball Super did the same thing. And now, when you sort of compare Super and Daima back to back, it really does feel like Super is even more trying to emulate days gone by, whereas Daima is like, no, we're in the 21st century now. We're doing a new style. The animation's different. The score. So to try to wrap this back around to the question, there is a different answer between what I would necessarily want and what it would actually be, because I'm still totally fine just watching Dragon Ball Z. I like to jump back into the time there. But yeah, I really think that if you're going to do a remake of the Dragon Ball manga, then yeah, you would have a style very similar to what we see in Daima right now. It'd probably be the same composer. You probably would have cut the filler stuff out. And
I wanted to comment, when I said panel by panel, I don't mean like every fight has to be like that, but I mean you're cutting the filler out as far as you don't have to have that much dialogue that they added for the anime. What people don't understand about filler, and you understand this, you have a whole series covering it, is that filler's not just Garlic Jr. and fake Namek. And no, when you watch Goku versus Frieza, for example, there's a lot of, and I don't mean just Ginyu and Bulma, I mean like there's a lot of moments in the fight that are not in the manga, and some of them are very, very cool. There's a lot of stuff they add to the fights that isn't in the manga if it's in the anime. For example, when Cell and Gohan are doing the beam struggle, in the anime or in the manga, which is Vegeta, the fact that Piccolo and all of Goku's friends help and give that speech about, oh, Goku, we're going to protect your son, that hits me right here in the, it's better. It's more emotional. Yeah, so I think, so, and that's the thing is, the manga might be Toriyama's vision, but one of the things that I tell people is that there are ways to take a vision and improve it, but I'm not saying to cut filler as far as like I'm saying adapt it more faithfully from the beginning without having to cut around it like they did with Kai. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, I have a question into this question, since we brought up you brought up Sailor Moon a minute ago, and it's actually right behind me as well. Just in this will be familiar to Dragon Ball fans, but the manga of Sailor Moon, it's Bishoujo Senshi Seira Moon. That's what it was called. But in the animated series, it was Bishoujo Senshi Seira Moon, Bishoujo Senshi Seira Moon R, Bishoujo Senshi Seira Moon Super.
Lance, the Japanese love their letters, don't they?
But yeah, you see something similar in Dragon Ball, which is there was a manga called Dragon Ball. That's what it was called. And then you have a Dragon Ball television series and a Dragon Ball Zeto television series. So the question now is, because this is very different from Sailor Moon, is that nobody really talks about, nobody really identifies Sailor Moon R, and Crystal definitely dropped those kinds of titles. If you remake Dragon Ball, are you calling anything Dragon Ball Z? Because that has a lot of brand recognition, to the point that even when the manga was released in America, they slapped a Z on those last 26 volumes. Can you escape from that? I mean, Dragon Ball Kai did, but only in Japan. They added the Z back on when it went international. So what would you do?
I think, and this is just a theory, it's not just going to be called Dragon Ball. It'll have some kind of name like Dragon Ball Reborn, or maybe a different letter of the alphabet. The Japanese. Okay. First of all, I want, and this is a mini rant. I don't like when movies do this. I don't like the fact that there's Ghostbusters 1985, and then there's 2016, and now, or 1984. I'm sorry, the year I was born, 84, and Dragon Ball was born. I don't like that. I don't like that there's, the Angry Video Game Nerds talked about this, dude. Like, I hate remakes that have the same names or sequels that have the same names. I can't stand it. Karate Kid. There's a new Karate Kid coming out next year, and the original title for it was Karate Kid. That's the third movie that's just called Karate Kid. It's the sixth Karate Kid, and they're all canon to themselves now. But they renamed it to, I think, Karate Kid Legacy. Dragon Ball Legacy. There you go. It's not, I think they could do it and just explain, like, we're going to follow Toriyama's vision, and there you go. I wonder, though, and I don't think they're going to do this. And I want to talk to you. Actually, let's hold on to that for a minute, because I want to have a conversation with you about Super versus Daima in just a minute. I want to get these super chats out of the way, though. Let's do a speed round here. I'm having a good time with you. Pablo de Rosa says, in Brazil, Muten Roshi called the Master Kame. It's not Roshi nor Muten Roshi, not Master of the Turtle style, just Master Kame. Don't know why, but it's hard to accept another name for that guy. But Master Kame is just taking the first Kame Sennin and Master Roshi and just putting them together. I don't hate it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like, that's not a terrible translation of Kame Sennin. Sennin being like a hermited sage type person. That's why he's called that. Funimation, when they use that term at all, which they rarely do, they call him, they would say turtle hermit, which, that's pretty close.
No, but remember in the Ocean dub when Peter Kalamis is like, it's the Kame Sennin form of martial arts, and I'm like, what did you just say?
That was Ian Corlett. That was
Ian Corlett. That's right. That was early in the series. It's the Kame Sennin style of martial arts. I'm like,
yeah. Well, he's a very interesting character just because he has multiple names in the original version that different people refer to him as depending on their relationship with him. He's introduced as the Kame Sennin, a turtle sage, a turtle hermit. And then later on, he's revealed to be the Muten Roshi, a heavenly martial arts master, a more serious title. And the dub sort of folded all that in on itself and just called him Master Roshi, as if he was a master whose name was Roshi. Of course, the funny part of that is that Roshi is actually the part of Muten Roshi that means master. So you're calling him Master. There's actually, in the second chapter of Viz's Dragon Ball Z, they actually call him, they only do it one time. They call him Master Muten, which is actually more accurate because, again, Muten Roshi, the Roshi part is the Master Muten. But yeah, you'll have characters like Buduma refer to him as Kame Sennin. She's not one of his students. She just sees him as this old turtle pervert, so Kame Sennin. But like Yamcha, Kuririn, Tenshinhan, they always call him Muten Roshi-sama because they respect him as a martial artist. Goku is different. He will call him Kame Sennin no Ji-chan, old man or old timer Kame Sennin, because
and that's always translated wrong. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Just they never get how he calls him Ji-chan. It's never done right.
Yeah. But that says a lot about their characters because Goku is one of his students, but also he isn't a really respectful. He doesn't really know the formalities of respectfulness. So he goes against the grain of what his friends do in that regard. So going back to what we were talking about before, there is a certain degree of nuance that is lost in the way that's been adapted.
Lance,
but yeah, it's a complicated. He has a lot of name for someone who doesn't actually have a name at all, because we have no idea if he was born with the name Kame or with something like, was he just called Turtle as a kid? There's that filler episode in Dragon Ball, where we meet the young Kame Sennin and Suru Sennin, and they call each other Kame and Suru. So maybe those are their names, but that's also filler. So we again, a lot of names for someone who doesn't really have a name.
And here's the other thing. If you want to go even deeper into the research that we're talking about, all that stuff is based on Chinese folklore anyway. So it's not all just Japanese, like the crane and the turtle style. That's all martial arts going back. Like me and Jordan talk about this every Tuesday, man. Like Dragon Ball is filled with a lot of this shit. If you really want to dig deep into it, you got to get Derek Padula's books, because Lance and I will often reference them, but we can't fit everything in the books because our videos will be 5 hours long every time. But he goes into extremely granular detail on this in those books. I wanted to say one thing before we get to the next super chat. I used to drive me up a wall when Super was on, and Goku would say, Ji-chan, and it would say Master Roshi. I used to get, because you can tell, you can hear it. Even if you're a dub fan, you know he's not saying that. And then my favorite ever shit sub moment is when they have that picture of Frieza and it's written Freeza and the sub says Frieza. I was like, do people get it now?
It's just one of those things where, again, it's sort of like where's your clubhouse, where's your playground kind of thing. Because that was always, because when Funimation first started putting out bilingual DVDs in summer of 2000, their first two, they had taken Steven Simmons's direct translations, and Funimation subbed out all of his nomenclature choices with dub names. And fans were furious because we've been begging for this for years, and you're finally giving us the original version of the show, and you're still, forcing dub stuff into it where it's might not be, the most appropriate thing to use. And fan backlash got them to change that. And for 20 years or so, that was the way it was on all of the DVD. Like you could access the dub, and they would say, the names and the terms that Funimation came up with, and you could switch over to the subtitle track, and you would get, a more accurate thing. But it wasn't until Dragon Ball Super when suddenly the subtitles were just reflecting the dub terminology. I think that was weird. That came down from Toei, weird. I believe, because they wanted a unified branding, which I understand, and especially given that Super was kind of the first time, and they were kind of late coming, but it was the first time that there was like a simultaneous release of the show, as opposed to back in our day when we would get the dub years or decades later. So it's like all these fans who had only watched the dub perhaps were coming in to view the new episode of Super, and I'm sure Toei, I understand that Toei would not have wanted them to be confused. They are the overwhelming majority of the audience. But it is just kind of sad for me, because I feel like I don't have a space for myself anymore. And it also feels like it's what you were saying about the Geekdom thing, where it's like, even when I was a kid and I was watching like subbed anime, and they would take liberties in the subtitles, I didn't know what it was, but all I knew was that what I was hearing didn't match what I was reading. And there's that trust issue where you're like, well, I don't know Japanese, but I do know that enough. There's something wrong here. So who do I trust?
It's like what they say when you know enough to be dangerous. You're not Herms, but you know enough to say, wait a minute. No, I'm just like you. We're exactly the same. And I will give you a bit of tidbit that even Herms doesn't know. The Master Roshi thing. You know where they got that from? The Spanish dub, because the Spanish dub referred to him as Maestro Roshi. Same thing with, where did they get Supreme Kai from? In the Japanese version, he's Kaioshin.
Supreme, basically God of the Kaios, the God of the gods.
God of the king gods, or whatever, right? If you want to get really
God of the Lord of the worlds.
Yeah, which is a hell of a title. That's like something biblical. But in the Spanish dub, the Kaioshin is translated as Supremo Kaiosama, which means Supreme Kaiosama. Mm-hmm. So they're basically giving him the title of Kaiosama, but so that's where the dub even got the word supreme from. Like, most fans do not know that, with the exception of people like me who have watched Dragon Ball in 3 different languages. I can tell you that. I'm proud of the Spanish dub because it's 97% accurate. The only thing they change is Piccolo Daima is Piccolo Daimaku. I don't know why they made that choice. It could have just been a wrong script. What I just told you, Supremo Kaiosama, and Chi-Chi's name is Milk. Literally the English word milk in Spanish, because Chi-Chi is a slang term for titties in Spanish and Japanese, and so yeah. Shaman Henderson, allied to Good Nightmare You, was horrible in dub. It's not Goku. I'll just say that. It's not the Goku that, it's not.
It was their version of Goku at the time, but yeah, it was very much not even close to what he was saying in the original.
And as I've said before, Sean Schemmel, surprising to a lot of people, has often told me how much he hated changing the dub, because his whole thing has always been, he told me that, and it's unfortunately it probably never happened, that someday he wants to meet Toriyama, which is not going to happen now, and he wants to get his approval, which is I actually have a lot of respect for that, because not a lot of voice actors think that deeply. A lot of them just want to do their job and read like in Simpsons, when Krusty's recording his audio, and he has the 3 lines real fast and then leaves. And I learn from the pros, kid, and leaves. Sean wants to like really make Toriyama happy. And I was so happy to hear him say that, because like I told you, a lot of actors don't care. Ahmed says, do you think pace will pick up? I hope Piccolo and Vegeta pull up at episode 6. I think you said big fight will be somewhere on Twitter. Thanks. Okay, I'll explain that. I was told a year ago that by episode 5 of Daima or 6, something's going to happen where all the folks that doubted Daima are going to jump on board. Now, I don't know if it's a fight. I don't know. I don't have details on this. It's probably a fight, or it could be a new character. In episode 5, we know that Goma is going to be on screen. So perhaps something going on with the villains. I don't know. Like, I've said this before. I have revealed things about Daima, and actually I told Lance about Dragon Ball Magic before I even told the public, but I didn't tell them everything. They didn't know everything. And even to this moment, I know things in Daima that I haven't told you, not because I don't trust you, but because you probably don't want to know about things that are happening in February. And I keep telling people February because I know what episode it happens in. But my point is, I don't have details because I don't have scripts. I don't have actual leaked episodes. Like, that's really difficult for somebody to get outside of Japan. Like, you know how back in the day, like Star Wars episode 3 leaked like 2 days before it came out publicly, and X-Men Wolverine leaked with unfinished CGI? That never happens in Japan. Well, not never, but very rarely. So the answer is, it is already picking up. We now have our 4-person party. We've got Goku, Pansy, Gloria, and Kaioshin. Soon, we will have the other party, Bulma, Vegeta, Piccolo, and Hibiscus. It's not even a spoiler anymore. It's in the damn intro. 2 parties. It's Final Fantasy VI. I'm down for it. And I'm going to talk to Lance here in just a moment about Daima versus Super, and because it's going to involve RPGs, and I want to get real nerdy with him. But first, let's get through these super chats here. So we got a lot that we're having a good time, bro. I got to address the audience here. Dutch Moon Rocky says, hypothetically, if a new DB anime remake adaptation were to happen, do you think it's going to be very censored, jokes, blood? That is a good question, because if you're going by the original manga, there is blood, there is gore. In fact, some of the Cell Jr. stuff when Gohan's, bro, there's like guts and shit, like
eyeballs.
yeah. And then Bulma's nipples. Well, they made the anime, but honestly, I'm just going to say this. I don't know how you feel about this, but here's the way I feel about this, Lance. If they're going to adapt Dragon Ball faithfully, this is for Toei, not Funimation / Crunchyroll. I think they need to release 2 versions. I know this is going to start at the 90s, but Fuji TV can have the censored one. Home video streaming / Blu-ray, whatever, will have the nipples, the fucking blood, like all the shit. Do you get where I'm coming from? Like, I'm not for releasing 2 versions for most things, but I know that Japanese television standards have changed, and I think if they're going to be faithful, you might as well just have an unrated version and a TV version. Does that make sense to you?
Makes sense to me. It certainly depends on what it is you'd be going for with a remake, because my opinion basically is, as long as I still have access to the originals, I'm all for a new interpretation doing whatever they want, and I'll be free to judge it and say, oh, I prefer this way, or I prefer it this way. But I almost encourage remakes or reboots or whatever to do whatever they want, because you're never going to find out what new variations work if you just keep remaking the exact same thing. We have Dragon Ball. We've had it for 40 years. So chances are, if there is a new version of Dragon Ball that is remaking that stuff from the 80s, they're probably going to have to be some changes made. That's just the reality of it.
Especially for TV.
Yeah, but the only thing that I get annoyed by is stuff like when like those new versions of the movies came out and they like censored out the middle fingers, stuff like that.
Oh God.
Where
yeah, and
like,
I want to make a point about that. Remember how earlier we were talking about like our fandom in the 90s? I want to make this clear to everybody. And Lance, the only reason why I even discovered the Japanese version of Dragon Ball is because I knew there was more episodes after Raccoon. And I wanted to see it. And the only way to see those episodes was in Japanese. And then when I turned on the Japanese and I see blood and I see cursing, because Anime Labs made us think that there was more cursing than there actually was. And I see like gods and all this fucking like dope shit. Remember, I was 12, 13 years old. I grew up on the Flintstones, Tiny Toons, Batman the Animated Series. I'm watching a show where motherfuckers are getting blown up and there's fucking blood and fucking cussing. And I'm like, now I'm a fucking adult. This is Dragon Ball for adults, which is why when I'm on Twitch and somebody comes in and goes, where's the dub? I go, this is what I tell them. I go, listen, if you want to watch a little kiddie G-rated fucking Disney homogenized Dragon Ball, you do it, bro. This is the place for adults. And most of the time they see the joke and they say, all right, I'll hang out. There's a guy, his name was Business Tax. Lance, he had never seen original Dragon Ball. He comes into the stream. He thought that Piccolo was Kami's son. Like, that's how disconnected he was. You could say maybe he's his nephew if you want to get kind of in a weird way, but not really, right? And then he saw it, and he was like, what the fuck? And that's why you can't start with Empire Strikes Back. You have to start with the beginning. I understand that early Dragon Ball is more adventure and less of the combat you're used to. It's fun. It's treasure hunting. It's different, but most people, when you watch it, you end up liking it anyways. And Daima's following that formula now. I don't know if you know this, Lance, and obviously you're watching the show right now. Daima is in its OG Dragon Ball phase. The way Daima will be structured, and this is not really a spoiler, but it's interesting. When Goku accesses Super Saiyan, take your pick, Saiyajin, whatever you want. We're going to go into Z battles when the Tamagamis come around and the other villains come around. We're going to get into some Dragon Ball Z fights. If you want to see Dragon Ball Z fights where motherfuckers are smashing each other into buildings, and that's coming. Daima's going to give you that. Then we get a little bit of GT. And that's, Lance, that's why I'm excited for Daima, because it's shorter than Super, but it's borrowing things from all the 40 years. And I love that. You know?
Wait, then we're getting GT? I feel like we're getting a lot of GT right now. And that's the joke you make. But I mean, even to the point that, they're on a planet and their spaceship was stolen, and now they're fugitives.
I can't tell you. There is one leak.
Please don't. Well, please don't tell me. I don't want to. I've purposely been going into this as blind as I possibly can.
And I respect that. And you're not the only one. My friend Daisy, guys, I am not this evil leaker that these gaslighters make you think I am. If you don't want to know something, I won't say shit. There is something coming up in Daima that's very, very GT. Now, I like it. I know GT is not everybody's favorite, but I like it. And that's why I'm saying, like, yes, there's a little bit of GT. There's a little bit of Z now still. I mean, episode 1 had a bunch of Z shit because it was the boost stuff. But, like, there's more GT stuff coming. And there's two things there's one big thing and one not so big thing. But there's a lot of Easter eggs of Dragon Ball, Z, GT, and a little bit of Super. So that's what I like. You get what I'm saying, right? Like, I like that this is a 40th anniversary and we're literally paying tribute to all 40 years and not just doing like what Super did, which is mostly like a Z interquel,
Yeah.
So also I wanted to bring this up to you. First of all, thank you, Dutch. Great question. You know what's funny, Lance? Remember when Resurrection F was coming out? And remember how the story was that Toriyama said that Resurrection F is the story he always wanted to put in the manga, but he never could. That's what he said. And Torishima was like, wow, this is brilliant. Not so much. But do you get the feeling, and I said this before Daima even started, doesn't it feel like Daima feels like it could actually be the follow-up to the Majin Buu arc? Like if we were in an alternate universe, I could see Toriyama continuing the Majin Buu arc with Daima in a manga. Like it feels more like a sequel to the Buu arc than Super did.
I'm going to hold off on that for now. I think I'm still clearly you know more than I do, but I feel like I'm too early into this to be able to say that for sure. I'm having a good time. That's really all I can say. It's too early for me to be able to say that I have a bead on what this overall feels like.
Well, I just meant like the fact that it's like demons and the references to the Buu arc, and you know what I mean. Like just it takes place literally 6 months because the Buu arc was May and Trunks' birthday is in November, if I remember correctly. So it's 6 months. So it's right after. And then we have Yosun Goku, which is about 1.5 years after Daima, unless Daima goes long, which I don't think it will. And then 2 years after that's Battle of Gods. I have to make a whole ass fucking video on this because people are still very confused about this, because I get questions, people asking me if this is after Yosun Goku, which, to be honest, Lance, I don't blame the fans for being confused about this, because we're getting an interquel before another interquel. It's kind of like how Star Wars has The Mandalorian, which is after, between 6 and 7. Then we've got the Obi-Wan show between 3 and 4. Like they just put stuff, but I'm okay with that. And you know what I always wanted, dude? Wouldn't it be awesome if he's gone now, but if they told a story in between the 23rd tournament and Raditz of like Goku confronting Piccolo like one more time, like having one more little fight, like sort of like what they did with Kenobi, except not shit.
That's what you were about to say.
But not shit. But you get like I would like it if we explore different parts of the Dragon Ball timeline. Like I'm all for it. Give me a Yamoshi special. Give me a fucking Namekian origin. Like the thing about Toriyama is, I'm not going to compare him to Tolkien, but he's an absolute lore master. I mean, there is so much lore. When you said in your review, when you're like, Dragon Ball Daima episode 1 is giving everybody a bunch of guidebook material. No, what they're giving me is a lot of Geekdom 101 explained video material, which I really appreciate.
I know that was one of the comparisons that I was thinking of too, which is it felt like episode 1 was made for YouTubers to have nuggets to talk about on their channels. I don't necessarily think that's the best storytelling though. I agree. It has gotten better in episode 4, which was the main focus of the video I just put out, which is that they're finally getting used to delivering information that's not just, well, we're just going to put the brakes down on the show and we're just going to talk. This is what this is, and this is what this is. And like, yeah, there are better means of conveyance. And to me, storytelling is more important than lore. You know, I prefer The Hobbit over the Silmarillion. If we're going to do the Tolkien comparison, I don't want a big book of lore. See, I want a story. I don't care about the lore unless I care about the story. You know, I don't care about the world unless I care about the people in it.
No, I respect that. I love both, man. Like and to your point, I actually read the Silmarillion in 7th grade and was so bored by it because I didn't understand what the fuck was going on, because I'm like, this is not really a story. I checked that book out in 7th grade after reading the Lord of the Rings, all 4 books. And then when I got older though, and I'm like, oh shit, fucking Melkor. Oh shit, Morgoth. He has an army of fucking Balrogs and dragons, and my imagination's running wild. And Dragon Ball Daima, Toriyama has a nice way of doing that. Like, you know how many fans have fucking begged for like a Galactic Patrolman origin story? Yamoshi. Bro, Toriyama mentioned Yamoshi in like 2 sentences in an interview, and everybody wants to do a whole movie about him. Lapis and Lazuli. Can we see like Dr. Garo abducting the teenagers? Everybody wants these stories, and I want them too. Like,
yeah, but those are stories. I'm happy to see stories, not just somebody sitting down for 10 minutes and going, and then Dr. Garo came out and he stole these 2 kids and da 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 da, and this is what happened, and these are all the because like, yeah, there was a great moment where they get the Sky Seed in the episode that just came out. And they don't, for once, they did not explain it. They just let you watch it happen. They didn't say, okay, this is made out of this and this and this, and this is the thing, and then we're going to cut off the tail, and then it's going to explode. It's like, no, they just plop them down on it, and Goku and Kaioshin are like, what is this? What are we doing? And then we got to see it happen. Like, that's storytelling. And that we learned it because we saw it happen, because we saw the story.
Yes. I want to make a quick correction here to Robbie. The Hobbit's part of Lord of the Rings. They separated it in the books. They were originally part of one same book. That is false. That is wrong information. If you look into that, originally, Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring was actually looked at as a Hobbit sequel. If you go all the way back to the old Tolkien, that people wanted him to write a sequel to the Hobbit. Lord of the Rings was something he had come up with after the Hobbit was already successful.
It was like 20 years later. I think it wasn't the Hobbit in the 30s and Lord of the Rings in the 50s, and they even changed parts of the Hobbit to match what he later came up with about the Ring and Lord of the Rings. I'm not a huge Tolkien expert. I've not read these in a very long time, but yeah, like originally, like it was like the Gollum like offers the ring to Bilbo, and he realizes that would not be in character for what he had later made the ring to be. Like he's like, oh, he would never give that up. That's not the Gollum that I have now. So they changed that.
Right. It's kind of like a fictional version of what they did with the Old Testament and New Testament. They're hundreds of years apart, but they put them together to form the Christian or the Catholic or the Judeo-Christian Bible. Except this is just,
Well, from what I've heard, I think there's a nugget of truth in there. I think it's like getting a little bit like staticky, is that people usually say that Lord of the Rings a trilogy. They will say that it is one book that was split into 3 parts. That's what I've always heard about that. The Hobbit is definitely a separate thing, but I always heard that Lord of the Rings, he didn't like it being referred to as a trilogy. But I could be misremembering that.
Well, if you read Lord of the Rings, though, each book is 2 separate books, because like he has book 1, book 2, book 3. So yeah, but the point is that yes, The Hobbit was way before Lord of the Rings. So let's get this one out of the way. Pablo says, filler in previous question, I meant anime original content, not filler in common sense. Yes, I totally get what you're saying. I love most of the original content when the crowd carry Tenshinhan and Goku after finals. Oh boy. Yeah, that's a tear-jerking moment. There's a lot. Here's the reality. I've talked about this before. Lance knows the manga very well. I know the anime very well, not because I don't love or respect the manga, but the anime made me feel things. And it's not because the manga isn't emotional, but with the music and the vocal performances, it's a different medium. When you're in a movie theater, and I want to ask you about this in a minute, it's a different experience than reading a novel. So to me, yes, there's tons of filler scenes in Dragon Ball and Z that are beautiful. I mean, dude, all the stuff with Gohan and the orphans, like I eat that stuff up. Princess Snake is the greatest filler ever in Dragon Ball. It's the greatest filler episode of all time. Fuck the fucking seatbelt driving episode. Princess Snake trying to fuck Goku is the best episode in Dragon Ball Z. His ass, he's walking around naked, and then she puts a mirror and sees he's dreaming about his wife, and then she wants to eat him. It's great. It's also realistic.
It's a fun episode. I realized it might have been one of the first ones I ever saw, really. But yeah, no, it's great.
Your guy said King Kai-sama. Oh, yeah, I mean, translations. Dutch says, what are both of y'all's favorite and least favorite arcs from inside Dragon Ball GT? Okay. I don't know if Lance wants to answer this yet because he's in the middle
I'm happy to answer it. I'm happy to.
Go for it.
I think I've already said it. I've already gotten to the point where I have said it. Yeah, first of all, I say that I consider the first 40 episodes to be a singular story arc. I call it the baby arc.
Right.
Everything from, because they go out to find the Dragon Balls and they encounter this enemy. It's somewhat similarly structured to the Frieza arc, where they go out to find Dragon Balls, they run into Frieza, Frieza takes over the show. Same thing here. So that whole Dragon Ball adventure leading into Baby, that's all one story to me. I think that is the best story arc of Dragon Ball GT. It is. I don't think
it's the longest.
Yeah, it's the one where it really feels like they have a lot of effort put into it.
Do you put Super 17 and Shadow Dragons as one because they kind of bleed into each other?
They kind of do. I was going back and forth on this one. I had people going. I didn't have the strongest feeling one way or the other. I could see it go either way, so I ended up just going with common consensus and splitting them up. But so from that perspective, Super number 17 is one of the worst things I've ever seen in my entire life. So
it was better when it was called Future Reborn. Movie 12. Yeah, it was better then. I agree. And you know what's funny about the baby arc is I've noticed fans are there's like a divide because I've seen a lot of fans say, well, the baby arc doesn't get good till the second half when like shit, the machine mutants and Dr. Miyu and all that. Then I've had other fans say, well, no, the first half is better because it's exploring and you're like Star Trek. You're finding all these new worlds and civilizations. Am I the only Dragon Ball fan? Sometimes I feel like I'm the only. Lance, Medios, our old pal Medios, we were having a political discussion. I don't discuss politics on this channel. He gave me the best compliment I've ever gotten in my life. He said, you are the most independent person I've ever met because literally I can take information from the left and the right and like sort of say, okay, I like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. I'm very nuanced, right? When it comes to Dragon Ball's baby arc, no, not every episode is going to be a hit. Not every episode is great. Some of that shit is weird as fuck. Pan with the deer, the Doltaki, that shit's fucking weird. But I don't hate it. Like, maybe it's because I like exploration, world building, JRPGs. Am I weird for liking I don't want people to think I literally like everything, but it's sort of like, if you know what it is, it's like Rise of Skywalker. Rise of Skywalker is a horrible movie when you watch it as a film, but there's little scenes in the film, like little scenes that I think are good. So am I weird for sort of liking both parts? Not loving, but liking, you know?
No, I don't think you're weird for that at all. I mean, but then again, I'm someone who doesn't often seem to have a lot in common with the typical Dragon Ball fan either. I tend to prefer the adventure stuff myself. And in terms of just the GT stuff, I do find a lot of the worlds fun. It's the axiom. It's good ideas, bad execution. But there can be enough in those ideas that they're fun. But there is, it definitely takes you on a journey, both literal and storytelling wise. It ends in a very different place than it starts, which I appreciate because what always got me into Dragon Ball was it was one of certainly the earliest serialized animated series I'd ever seen before. As opposed to it just being, oh, here's 10 minutes and here's some few jokes and then it's over, like your Flintstones example earlier. For me, Dragon Ball has always been about movement, about when I realized there was more after Riku, which is all we had at the time. I realized there was tons of stuff before that, and Goku was a kid, and then I got a fan sub, and Gohan's in high school. It's like what always excited me about Dragon Ball was that you could dip your toe anywhere in it. And it would be completely, no matter wherever you dipped that toe, it would be a very different series. It never stayed the same, which is why I've always been very reluctant. Found it kind of dubious, this whole we've been stuck in this Boo arc aesthetic for the past 10 years now, where there is a status quo, whereas every time we meet these guys, they're having a party at Capsule Corporation, and Goku and Vegeta have a new adventure, and it feels very episodic to me.
Yes. Yeah, and also it totally changes what we had originally thought about those 10 years because there's absolutely no possible way they can say nothing happened. See, when Beerus showed up, at the end of that film, it was like, oh, it's an adventure that happened and it was forgotten in time. Same thing. No, Yosan Goku did that. And then Beerus,
they literally said that.
Yeah, forgotten that. Fine. I accept it. But now we've got Frieza. Then we've got Broly, Goku Black. We've got all these things going on. It's like you can't say nothing happened. A lot happened. A lot. Moro, Granola, like a lot. Not a little. A lot happened. So it's
was that a joke? A lot Moro? Did you do that on purpose?
I did not do it on purpose, but I should lie and say that I did just to get brownie points from you and other people. Connor Burton says, what is Lance excited for most in Dragon Ball Daima?
Oh, that's a hard one to answer just because I've tried to go in with very little expectation. I don't mind being critical of things, but I don't want to give any credence to the idea of me being a hater by going, I think the show should be this, and if it ends up not being that, then I get angry about it. But I think in a general sense, what I'm most excited about, I really do enjoy this sort of back to adventure kind of mindset. I've enjoyed getting to see new locations. It's certainly, I don't know if it's enough to carry a show, but just I've seen people compare it to things like compliments I gave the Red Ribbon Army arc, which feels like the last time in Dragon Ball where the location really felt new and exciting.
The Demon Realm.
Yeah. Because you're going to all these new places, Muscle Tower and Under the Sea and into pirate like Dragon Ball's version of pirate caves, and this giant tower sticking out of the ground where a cat lives, and
you go to West City for the first time too.
Yeah, they're all these new things you were seeing, and then from that point on, there really wasn't. And like the more you got into, the characters can just zip around and fly wherever they want to. It's like the world was just like a place where fights could happen. So it was all just the same rocky terrain. You go out into space, you find planet Namek, and it's just Gohan even says, this looks like the place where Piccolo trained me, as in it's a bunch of rocky plateaus where we can fight. So Daima, as much as I've complained about the story stopping so Gloria can go do a travelogue and say, this is the volcanoes that cause the air, and this is the thing where this is the sea of eternal darkness, and this is this. It is what does work about that is that Goku's excited to be here. And because Goku's excited to be here and learn all this stuff, I'm excited to be here and learn all this stuff. So just the fact that we are in this new place with all this grand new potential of it being, a fun world with fun characters and fun stories. That's what I'm looking forward to. That's what I'm most excited for.
Okay, no, I mean that fair enough. And I will say this. Let me ask, actually, you brought up, I was going to ask you about this and you actually reminded me. How do you feel about Daima? Because, Dragon Ball Super became the Goku and Vegeta show. Every arc was really just them and their adventure, especially like the Universe 6 and Trunks arcs. Yes, there were other characters, but how do you feel about what they're doing with Daima in that we have Gloria and Pansy as two new characters from the Demon Realm joining Goku and Kaioshin, which just that pairing alone is different. And then we've got Vegeta and Piccolo, who kind of are both, I expect to see some pretty fun stuff but with their interactions, because Piccolo and Vegeta are both kind of similar as far as their history with Goku and their kind of stoic, don't be a goofball kind of attitude. But and so that's going to lead to some fun stuff. And Bulma's down there. How do you feel about like the it being some new characters? And do you think that Daima should have taken advantage of like Krillin or Yamcha or some of these other characters that have kind of been sidelined? Because it feels like the characters of old, I see a lot of fans say they should give the humans a power up. I don't think that's ever happening, dude. I don't think Ten Shinhan is ever going to go back to being important ever again. And I hate to say that because he was an awesome character in the original Dragon Ball and in early Z.
Sorry, what exactly is the question you're asking?
How do you feel about Glorio and Pansy and the Hibiscus is coming up being introduced versus bringing, instead of using them, having like Krillin or somebody from the past join Goku? You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm typically fine with it. Again, I'm trying to not have expectations. Like there are certainly characters that I like, but it's similar to Dragon Ball GT, where I feel like I get comments all the time that I've been covering it, where people are like, "Oh, this should have been Vegeta, or this should have been Piccolo, or Gohan should have been here doing this." Like I've always been fine with Goku, Pan, Trunks, Giru, You know, like if that's how you want to tell your story, those are the characters that you want to explore, then do it. I think um, there is certainly a part of me, the fan part of me, that has characters that I want to see do other things. I'm certainly one of, you know, Yamcha's biggest defenders. But something that I think I talked about when I was covering the Saiyan arc is that it's almost like in the comic strip Peanuts, or just any kind of story really, where if you go to like the early chapters, you'll see a bunch of different characters. Like Charlie Brown's there, but it's, you know, it's Patty, not Peppermint Patty, but Patty, and like Shermie, and all these people you've never heard of before. Because eventually Charles Schultz introduced characters that he thought worked better, he was more fond of and could write better for, and so the story evolved to accommodate, you know, Lucy and Linus and all, you know, people like that. And there is kind of a similar thing in Dragon Ball, where, in a way, Kuririn became the better Yamcha. Like he made Yamcha kind of redundant, in terms of, you know, being a, you know, a martial artist character who is a friend, who's also kind of nervous and bumbling around women, and who really wants to get married.
Yajirobe replaced him for like one arc, for like a little bit, with the same
like,
voice actress.
With a very different character. But you see it even more with like the angry stoic rival character, who always starts out as like a much more energetic villain. Like once they become heroes, they stop being happy. You notice that? It's like Ten Shinhan is like this trash talking, you know, makes fun of everybody, laughing. As soon as he becomes a hero, he doesn't know how to tell jokes. They even make a line about that in the Moro arc in Dragon Ball Super, which is like, Ten Shinhan can't tell jokes. He used to, but I'm getting off from there. Getting off topic from there. Different thing. Ten Shinhan was like the prototypical angry, you know, rival. I'm really serious. I just want to test myself. You know, I'm going to be better than Goku. And then Piccolo came along, and he filled that role better. And then Vegeta came along, and he filled that role better. But you know, Piccolo kind of became the next Ten Shinhan in terms of, oh, big guy, little guy, and they're really close friends. Well, you got Ten Shinhan and Chaozu, or you got Piccolo and Gohan. And that ended up being a more developed relationship. So characters like Yamcha and Ten Shinhan and Chaozu kind of get thrown by the wayside just because their roles have been passed on to other characters. And so, you know, I'll have my annoyances that Toriyama tends to just discard characters. But from a creative standpoint, it does make some degree of sense. So, wow, I tangented away from the question. But I don't know if these are going to be the best characters for the show. I hope they are. But if that's what they want to do, to scale back the cast and use characters that they think are going to have a lot of fun potential for whatever story they're going to tell, which I don't know what it is yet, then yeah, I'm along for the ride. I'm not bitter about it. It's weird we haven't seen Gohan yet, but
do you trust Gloria? Because they every week, man, there's something up with that guy. There's that's on Chekhov's gun, foreshadowing, whatever the fuck. Like, there's something up with him.
I'm not.
You sense it too, right?
There's definitely more to him that meets the eye, which is good. Like, again, you shouldn't just introduce a character and have him hand you his resume and go, "These are all of my details for the Wikipedia page." Like, yeah, you're supposed to be learning about him as you go along. So yeah, there's definitely, I'm sure he has his own agenda. The fact that he brings up, you know, wanting to use the Dragon Balls, you know, could be something there. But clearly he has his own motivations for wanting to bring them on this journey. So I'm happy to see where it goes.
I have a theory. This is not a spoiler. This is not a leak. This is a theory, because I don't know for sure if this is going to happen. I think he wants Goku to kill Goma so that him or his king or whoever can overthrow him and become the next Demon King. And I think the reason why he told Goku, just use the Earth Balls to become human again, or become tall again, don't use the Demon Balls, is because he probably doesn't want Goku to go back to his full strength. because he knows it'll be a problem. And I think he plans on eventually betraying him. But I think there's a chance, like Han Solo, where as he's sort of thinking selfishly, he might think back to Goku saving his life or doing something nice during Daima and maybe switch back to the good side. I think the Han Solo comparisons are so obvious to me. It's insane. And we know how much Toriyama loves Star Wars. So part of me thinks there's no question he wants Goku to take out Goma. I mean, when I first heard about Daima when I first heard about it, when I did my video in July where I talked about the basic plot, I was told it's a Game of Thrones situation where everybody wants to take Dabura's spot, which means that there's somebody else besides Goma that wants to be the king. That's why I think that. Maybe it's this new king we're going to meet in episode 5 or whatever. I don't know, but I'm just saying I don't know. Like, he's either going to end up being he's definitely hiding something. How about that? He's definitely hiding something. I don't know. Yeah. I wanted to say the poll results. Do you want more forms in Dragon Ball? 61% said yes. 39% said no. So once again, we're in the minority.
I'm surprised it's that close, honestly.
Earlier, it was like 53-47. I was like, damn, but I guess new people joined or whatever. So it is what it is. Who knows? But I wanted to talk about Super versus Daima. So the thing that's funny is that and this is again where you and I are going to agree and the rest of the fandom is going to disagree with us. Obviously, Dragon Ball Super is better financially and health-wise for my channel than Daima because people aren't connecting with Daima because of preconceived notions and because a lot of them only saw Z and just want things to be like Z, and they also want Super to continue. But when I look at Daima, the reason why I like it so much is because it's not Super. And I'm not saying that I hate Super. That's not what this is about. But Super had a very specific type of Dragon Ball they wanted to tell us, with lots of member berries and lots of like, hey, Trunks is back. Frieza's back. It's always that. Daima. Okay, yes, they're kids again, like GT. Fine, whatever. But new characters, new place to explore. Let me tell you something. It drives me absolutely nuts that all I wanted from Super was to explore the 12 universes so we can see new planets and new people and all that cool shit. And here we are with Daima, and we're actually getting the exploration of the demon realm, replacing what I wanted to see in Super. Because all I wanted was to see all the universes and see Goku meeting all, and now we're getting it in Daima. So like, it pisses me off because not only is Daima's production so much better than Super, like it feels more like the Dragon Ball, like what I think Dragon Ball is. Whereas Super feels more like what I think a lot of the casual fans think Dragon Ball is. You know, it's really weird. And while I do want Super to come back, you know, because I think the Mora arc and Granola arc, and I want to see Black Frieza, I want to see the story progress, I want to see after End of Z, I want it to continue, I really do. But like, Daima it feels refreshing. What do you think about this? I know it's a complex topic with nuance and shit.
I mean, I definitely agree with you that, you know, my philosophy always is, it's not that I hate fighting, as my detractors like to claim, but that's not the main draw for me. For me, the fighting is just a way of telling a story and evoking drama. You know, like when I was a kid and I was first watching the Saiyan arc, and this might have actually influenced how I view Dragon Ball in general, because like especially the animated version of that, you know, adds in all these episodes that are just sort of standalone adventures. Like Gohan is in the woods for a year and he makes friends and he gets into skirmishes and all this kind of stuff, and then all of that is to build up to this big payoff at the end where there's this huge fight where these characters you're dying one by one and they're screaming, "Where is Goku?" And like that, it's a great fight, but it's a great fight for me because I've spent all this time learning about these characters and caring about them, and so the fight is a way of getting that drama out there. So for me, the fighting has always been a means to an end, not a means to itself. But I know that my time on YouTube seems to have taught me that I'm in the minority about that, where a lot of people come to Dragon Ball because the fights look cool and they're really exciting, and that is fine. You know, people can enjoy things for whatever reasons they want to. It just makes me kind of the weirdo. And so, yeah, very much when I was, because I was at the announcement panel at New York Comic Con last year, which I have to say, I have to give you credit. I have to give you credit because I remember I was telling you that I had plans to go to New York and attend this with a friend of mine, and you're like, oh, you're going there because of the Dragon Ball panel, right? And I'm like, the what now? I had no idea they were announcing a new Dragon Ball series, and I would not have gone there and done stuff related to my channel if I had not like, oh, I gotta get in that. But when
the best part's when you were in line and those guys were like, that Dragon Ball magic bullshit, that's not true. That fucking asshole Geekdom, all he does is make up shit.
It wasn't quite.
It wasn't that bad. You said they were actually supporters of mine.
That is the reason I bring that up, is because they were all saying, everybody around me in line were all saying, oh, I hope that magic stuff isn't true. Oh, it's been debunked. It's been debunked. And I want it to be Super version 2 again. And I'm just like, me by myself going like, well, actually, it's set. And I was like, oh, it sounds kind of fun to me. And they're all like, oh, you know, like pat on the head, like, you little weirdo. So yeah, I know. And I definitely, you know, if I didn't know before, I definitely realized in that moment that what I tend to like about Dragon Ball is not necessarily what a lot of other people like about Dragon Ball. So that Daima appeals to me on that level.
Yeah, and also this is just about the super anime. The reality is, and this is how I've felt for a long time, and I'm probably going to do a whole video about this. I really don't like the movie retellings compared to the movies. There are some things I appreciate more about them, but Resurrection F, what people ask you, what is your least favorite arc of Dragon Ball? Is it Garlic Jr. or Super 17? No. The Resurrection F Super arc is absolute torture, and I will never watch it again if I don't have to. I hate it so much, and the movie wasn't even that great. So you can imagine the arc, how much I despised it. But here's the truth, and I'm just going to be real. If I'm getting somebody into Dragon Ball, and they go through Dragon Ball and Z, and then what's next? And I have to tell them, okay, turn on Super, but skip the first 27 episodes. That's not a very good look for your show, dude. If I'm a producer in Hollywood, and my reputation is, oh, it's a good show when you get to the third arc. That's not good. That's just not good. And Dragon Ball, and even the Z portion, start good, I think. I think they both, I mean, I said it last 2 Saturdays ago that Dragon Ball Episode 1 is significantly better than Dragon Ball Z Episode 1. Dragon Ball Z Episode 1 is a snore fest. Dragon Ball Episode 1, shit happens. But Super had a lot of things that fans wanted. The evil Goku shit, like Trunks coming back, all that cool stuff. More fusions, Broly and Gogeta. These are like fanboy fantasies come to life. And I get it, but Daima feels super. Look, I know they're all corporate now. Daima feels like Toriyama is continuing the manga the way he wants to. Super felt like it was Toei, Akio, and the corporation saying, you should do this, which is exactly what it was, because I've talked about this. It was Akio that went to Toriyama and said, hey, Trunks is going to be in Xenoverse 2, and he's in Dokkan. Can you bring him back? Sure. Hey, and we have where's my piece of paper here? Yeah, our reports here say that Broly's a very popular character. You should rewrite him. Okay, yes, sir. Piccolo's going to be the lead in your next movie. You know, Gohan has a lot of fans. There's like a 5-foot-tall girl in Australia that loves him. You should bring him back, right? That's what it was, though. It was Akio telling him, like, and that's literally, we know this. This is not even speculation. We know this for a fact. Whereas with Daima, yes, there's a couple things that sort of feel like, hey, you should do this. but it does feel more like Toriyama's like, okay, I'll take the GT ideas, I'll take what I used to do, I'll put them in a pot, and this is what I'm going to give you. It really does feel like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and again, it's still hard for me to say only 4 episodes in, but I am having a good time. So, but I to be fair, I always come into each new story with a great sense of optimism. It's kind of like a running gag that I don't care for the Tournament of Power arc. But when I was watching those first episodes, I was really excited. Like, oh, I can't wait to see where this goes. Same thing with Granola, another arc that I did not end up liking at the end. At the beginning, I'm like,
Same.
all right, I'm excited. So, I fall into this every time. So I hope that I end up agreeing with you on this. But right now, I don't know where it's going. So.
Well, the thing is, it's going to be a difficult comparison. First of all, I want to say this person says we might get a new kind of fusion. Well, you probably will just because the bugs have already been introduced. But it's going to be a weird comparison because Daima, from what I understand, is just one big story. Like it's the Demon Realm Daimakai. It's the Demon Realm story. Fine. Super is multiple story arcs. So it's hard to compare Daima to even GT because Daima, and I said this before, Daima is too long to be. It's more like one of the recent Dragon Ball movies, like Broly and Superhero, but it's too long to be a movie, but it's too short to be a long series, like Super was. So it's kind of in that middle ground. So I think it's actually easier to compare Daima to the movies, but then that's not fair either because there's more world building. See, Daima's somewhere in the middle. You know what I mean? Where it's like it's its own thing. But I like that it's its own thing. You know what I'm saying? So far, I mean, of course, we don't know. Also, I did want to let everybody know, please go subscribe to Mr. Fusion. The link is in the description. First ballot Hall of Famer. My channel probably would not be where it's at if it wasn't for Lance, only because I was watching Dragon Ball Dissection before I even started to think about doing YouTube. And Lance is one of the only, there's like 3 people on here who were actually talking about the Japanese Dragon Ball and going and explaining the differences and going back to the roots of things. Everybody else was a dub fan who was talking over video game music. There was like 100 channels doing the same thing. It was, and so when I started Dragon Ball, or when I started Geekdom 101, the epitome of geekdom, I looked at like what Lance did with Dragon Ball Dissection. And then I looked at Rob from Comics Explained. I've told this story a while ago. And I said, okay, Rob is explaining things about comic books. Lance is dissecting Dragon Ball. If I take those things and I fuse them together, where instead of going arc by arc like what Lance is doing, I'm just explaining like this transformation, the history of this character. Nobody was doing that back then. And people always ask me, like, what did you do to like get your channel off the ground? And that's kind of what I did, is I took Rob's formula of explaining specific things and Lance's Dragon Ball method and kind of combined them and kind of made my own thing. And people should do that. But one of the things I have coming up that I haven't started on yet is I'm doing a video similar to your dissection about the Saiyan arc, the Saiyan arc, the Vegeta arc, because I want to explain to people that a lot, because of the video games and because of the dub, people, and because of just people being more into Z, people always look at Vegeta Saga as the beginning of the story. And I understand that, and people say, wow, like Dragon Ball Z had some balls. They kill off the main character in the 5th episode. When it's like, is it really the 5th episode, or is it really the 158th episode? That's really what it is, right? And I want to explain to people that if you look at the Saiyan saga, the Saiyan arc, as the 8th or 7th arc of Dragon Ball, it actually has a totally different context, because this arc changed everything. The minute they revealed that Goku was an alien, the minute they gave away his backstory, everything that came after went back to that point. And it's fascinating to me. Super Saiyans, fucking Trunks' existence, everything, Frieza, everything just came from Goku being an alien. Everything all tied together with Goku being an alien. And I think Goku being an alien is probably the most powerful retcon outside of Darth Vader being Luke's father, because like everything after had to follow that when it wasn't the original plan. And I think if people actually go back and read the manga or watch your videos or watch the series, when you see all of Dragon Ball and you see everything Goku went through, all the tournaments, he lost, he won finally, he saved the world from the Demon King. And then all of a sudden in the middle of the series, he's an alien the whole time. And there's all this fucking backstory and this intergalactic shit. I think it's actually more powerful like that. I think I can only imagine what people in Japan were thinking when it's like, what the fuck? Like, you know what I mean? Like the greatest warrior in history is Goku's brother. That's the name of episode 2 of Dragon Ball Z. That's wild to me, you know?
Bit of a misnomer, though. I mean, I guess Raditz is not the
no, not even close.
Warrior in history,
but the Japanese.
But he was comparatively speaking. He was.
Well, it's the classic hype machine that we call Japan that I love so much, because those double episode titles we discussed earlier. I mean, I'm sorry. Look, I understand that some people think that the Japanese titles are a little too long, and I get it. I'm not totally disagreeing with you on it, but I don't know, man. I don't know, like BoJack Unbound versus Galaxy at the Brink. Galaxy at the Brink is and there's more to that title.
Ginga Giri Giri.
Yeah, Buchuina, blah blah blah. I don't know. No, my favorite one is movie 13 when Nozawa's like, Kyogin, but no, not that one. She goes, Goku yabba yabba yabba. I don't know how she says it. Her, you know what I'm talking about, right? Goku yabba yabba yabba. You don't know yabba dabba do. She says it so fast. But okay, I'll give you this. Wrath of the Dragon, fuck that. Goku's not really taking Wrath. Dragon Fist Explosion, if Goku can't do it, who can? Okay, take out the if Goku can't do it, who can? Dragon Fist Explosion is a cool name for a movie.
Ryukin Bakuhatsu, correct?
Bakuhatsu. Yeah, Kyogin Batoru is movie 7. Kyogin Batoru, Sandai Super Saiyajin. That's movie 7.
Oh, yeah, that one.
That's one of my least favorite ones. But again,
my least favorite one.
Yeah, that's my second least favorite. But again, it's like the fandom loves that movie. And there are cool fights in it. I mean, there's cool moments in it. But it's just, you know, it's not, it has no story. There's no story to the movie. And I mean, I've always liked The World's Strongest. And I do like movie 3. I mean, that's another one. Okay, Tree of Might. I don't hate that title at all. But again, in Japanese, the Tree of Might itself is called the Tree of Godly Might. And there's all this cool fucking like, oh, you eat it, you get the powers of a god. But then you've got, you know, Chikyu Marugoto Chokesen, which is, it's got like 5 different translations. Earth's ultimate deciding battle, or super decisive battle for Earth, or that just sounds cooler than the Tree of Might. However, Dead Zone, I think, is better than Dragon Ball Z, the movie, or even Return My Gohan. Dead Zone is a cool name for a movie. Let's keep it. Then that's a cool name for a movie. So sometimes the dub wins. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I'm just trying to tell people that make sure you check out Mr. Air Fusion. Last call for super chats. We're going to close out. Final call for questions now. And when you watch Mr. Air Fusion, start with Dragon Ball Dissection. Go back to the very beginning. And as you go along, Lance covers like the manga arcs, and then when he's in the next arc, he'll then go back and do the TV adaptation. So, but there's different playlists on your channel for like the anime and the manga and then the movies, right?
I have a playlist of all my Dragon Ball videos, DVD or not. I have a full Dragon Ball Dissection playlist, which is every episode, every video I've made of Dragon Ball Dissection in release order, and then I have them separated into category. I have Dragon Ball Dissection the manga, Dragon Ball Dissection the movies, Dragon Ball Dissection, movies and specials, DBD TV, which is when I cover the the animated adaptations of what I'd covered in the manga, and I also have a Dragon Ball GT playlist as well. So a lot of ways to find what you're looking for, hopefully easily. And I also do things that aren't Dragon Ball related. I did a whole series on live action Sailor Moon earlier this year. As you mentioned, I was doing a series for a couple of years, Mighty Morphin Jew Rangers, which was comparing Super Sentai to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I've done Batman, I've done Star Wars, I've done Star Trek. My channel has all kinds of crazy things on it. I did a Ghostbusters 2 video 12 years ago.
Ghostbusters 2 is a good movie. I don't care what you say.
I mean, I didn't say it wasn't in that video, but yeah, I did that video 12 years ago, a Ghostbusters 2 video.
Well, I meant like people hate that movie for some reason. Okay, it's like the first one, but did you see Frozen Empire?
I still haven't seen it. No.
It got a lot of hate. Here's the way I think you should see it. It feels more like an episode of the animated series than it does a Ghostbusters movie. And it tries to juggle too many characters because they have like all the old Ghostbusters except for Harold Ramis, and they have all the new ones. And so that's the thing. Like, that's the back to the Dragon Ball stuff we were talking about. Toriyama introduces so many new characters. And so, unfortunately, when you have Trunks, then you have Kid Trunks and Goten, then you have, Gloria and Pansy are the new members of the crew, but they're probably only going to be in Daima and maybe something else after. Maybe we'll see. The future's uncertain right now. But, like, unfortunately, even though I love Ten Shinhan, I love that character a lot. Like, when I do my Tuesday streams with Jordan, we were talking about, like, Goku as a martial artist. And this kid in the chat was like, well, he's a Saiyan. And I'm like, you're not looking at it the right way. When Toriyama was writing this part of Dragon Ball, that wasn't revealed yet, nor did he probably even think of it. And we're trying to explain that this whole like Saiyan warrior race thing, it's really just an offshoot of like the martial arts spirit, because Ten Shinhan behaves a lot like Goku in that he wants to learn to become a better fighter. He wants to learn the Mafuba. He wants to be the best. So like, it's not that Goku and Vegeta, well, they're Saiyans. That's from people that are ingrained in Z. What I tell people is you have to disconnect from Dragon Ball Z and view Dragon Ball as one big thing from Pilaf to Buu, and the context changes because, yes, we do have a warrior race of guys who get stronger when they fight, but that's all the martial arts spirit. That's what it's based on. It was in Journey to the West. It's in every Kung Fu movie that Toriyama grew up watching. Like, that's Dragon Ball. It's wuxia. Like, people think that Dragon Ball is this like science fiction action show, and it is, but that it's so much more than that. And that's why I think that people need to see everything. Then you get a full understanding, right?
Yeah, I mean, that earlier context can be lost when retroactive continuity comes in, and there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of really good story opportunities came out of the Saiyajin. But yeah, I think it's important. It's not necessary because, again, like how you digest and interpret media that's your own personal experience. But I do think that something is lost when you that context out and try to look at a story of, like this is a guy sitting down in 84, 85, 86, and what is it he's trying to say, without bringing in all of that later stuff that was, divide, because story. It's like
compartmentalization, right?
Yes, storytelling is not real life. Storytelling is not linear. So things can just like it's like the old saying, like this was always true, but was it always true yesterday?
Yeah, and not just that. Like, we were watching Dragon Ball on Twitch. We're watching the Demon King Piccolo arc, and I keep seeing people say Namek. And again, I'm not even mad at them, but I'm trying to explain to them, like, look, yes, later on it was revealed that he was an Namekian. That we all know that, but you have to disconnect from that and view him as being the Demon King. And thankfully now Daima has fully confirmed that the Namekians are from the demon realm, so it's not that like disjointed anymore. But I try to tell people you have to view things like like you said, or you know, what was it yesterday? And Saiyans and Saiyan pride and all this stuff that you hear from people. Oh, Vegeta has Saiyan pride. I think it's funny. A lot of people who claim to be Vegeta fans don't know shit about the character, don't understand his arc. But it's not about him having pride to be, you know, oh, well, I want to rule over the Saiyan peasants. Multiple times in Dragon Ball Z, he kills Nappa because he's too weak. He doesn't care about being a ruler. The reason why he refers to himself as the prince is because he grew up in a class-based society and was programmed from birth to think that he was superior to everybody else. Along comes Kakarot, who kicks his ass or gives him a beating, and he can't handle it because his whole life he's been taught by his father, by Frieza, by the battle powers, that he's this, you know, I'm so much better than you. And then this low-class warrior is constantly overcoming him, constantly discovering new things. He's a better mental martial artist. And that's Vegeta's character arc, all the way to the Buu arc, where he finally tells him he's number one. So we've got people who say shit like, well, Vegeta regressed in Super. He did not regress. At no point did Vegeta say, I'm going to stop training. He never said that. He said, when he said Goku's number one, it's like, I have accepted now that you and I can be equals, or you and I, like, I am not superior to you. And that is a beautiful piece of storytelling, man. It's one of the things about the Borg that you can't deny. Do you agree or no?
About Vegeta specifically, or about?
Well, the Vegeta, like the fact that people misinterpret Vegeta's arc a little bit because they think they don't understand what the pride thing is, more about a martial arts pride, not I'm prideful to be a prince ruling over people. He doesn't give a fuck about that, especially when Bulma, when he has Trunks, like in the Buu arc, he doesn't give a shit about, let's bring back Planet Vegeta. Hey, Geekdom, should Vegeta wish back Planet Vegeta? Why? Why would they want to do that? They're all weak anyways. Well, Goku might want to fight some Saiyans. Bro, he's a god now. Why would he care? Like, and so I'm trying to explain, like, it's not about being the rulers of this awesome race. It's about him accepting that just because you are told your whole life that you're better than somebody else does not mean that you are. And that's a powerful lesson that Toriyama tells us. And I'm so tired of people discrediting the man, because even though Dragon Ball is far from perfect, there's a lot of really important life gems in there, man. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I think he has some great storytelling. I think Vegeta is a very he can be a fantastic character.
Yes, he isn't always, but he can be. Last question here. Pablo loves cheese says, remember when Gohan met the orphans in filler? Yes, I do, and I like that episode. I actually like that episode. I think that arc is better in the anime and the manga, and in that upcoming video I've got where I discuss how that arc is actually the 7th or 8th arc of Dragon Ball and how it's more important there. Because the video is going to be called The Importance of the Saiyan Saga, or The Importance of the Saiyan Arc. I haven't decided, one of those two. And it's going to be about, like, that is the most important arc in the entire series to me, because everything that came after changed everything. So that's the point of the video, but I don't want to give too much away because I want these motherfuckers to watch the shit. But yeah. So what do you do? Do you have any comments on the Gohan episode with the orphans? I saw it on syndication.
Yeah, real quick. I mean, I love the orphan episodes. I love both of them. It's just a great idea of, you know, Gohan escaping from Piccolo and then finding these people. And it's an episode that plays really differently for me as an adult than it did as a kid. As a kid, I worry that the orphans get captured at the end. And as an adult, and especially seeing the whole thing, because yeah, when it was first dubbed, they cut it down to about half of its length, and you don't see the kids going into town and, you know, like going crazy, and so a lot of that's cut out. But yeah, as an adult, it very much is. Yeah, they really do need, like, they are not ever going to be able to rise to their potential if they are living in this sort of abandoned, you know, hurricane ruined shanty town. They need some guidance in their lives. They're just becoming delinquents. It's almost kind of like the Chi-Chi effect, where I feel like you see her differently as a kid than you see her as an adult. I love those. I love those episodes. They're really good.
Yeah, all the stuff. There's one I don't like too much, but a lot of the stuff with him and the dinosaur. The episode, I'm gonna be honest. The episode with Gohan and the dinosaur, and where it ends, where the brown dinosaur eats the weaker one, that kind of made me sad as a kid. I won't even lie. Like, I was actually pretty sad when I saw that, because Gohan comes out and sees the bones and he's crying and shit, and I was like, this fucking cartoon's making me feel things. Like, that's the first thing you think. Like, I'm feeling things. I wasn't like crying, but I was like, I feel this. Why is this connecting with me? And I think that every Dragon Ball fan, whether they be a dub fan, a sub fan, because I saw that dub first, Ocean dub too with the censorship. I think that once they get that moment where they feel something, whether it be Piccolo sacrifice, Goku sacrifice twice, whether it be, I mean, I have said that the most beautiful Gohan moment is not when he goes SS2, even though that might be the best moment. The most beautiful one is when he finds out that Videl's pregnant in Battle of Gods, and he picks her up and he's happy, because that's the most real. I've said this before. When Gohan finds out that Videl's pregnant and he's super happy, that's the realest fucking scene maybe ever, because that is powerful. Like, you're going to be a father. People don't get it, man. Like, motherfuckers. That's why, like, I defend Dragon Ball, bro. Like, I got these guys on Twitter trying to bait me into doing a One Piece Dragon Ball. They have this stupid shit on Twitter where it's like One Piece fans and Dragon Ball fans are fighting and shit. Dude, I'm fucking 40, bro. I'm a grown-ass man. I run a business. I don't have time to be sitting there fucking crying about some fucking manga I've never read. Like, I told the guy, bro, get that virgin second grade shit out of here, because it was like, I don't care about debating Dragon Ball, but when I hear somebody say that Dragon Ball has no story, or when I hear them say that Dragon Ball is poorly written, no, it's not perfect, but I'm just like, fuck, bro. Like, have you ever seen this shit? Are you just regurgitating? The problem is that people regurgitate what they hear instead of actually watching it. For years, it was GT sucks. It's not canon. Have you ever seen it? No, but all my friends told me it sucks. Have you ever seen it, though? No. And it's like, Goku sounds like a girl. Have you ever watched the sub? No, but I saw a clip once. And it's like, maybe if you try it, maybe it won't be so. Oh, well, Daima sucks. They're all kids again. I wanted Moro. And then when they see the animation, yo, this was pretty cool, bro. Check this out. And it's just like, dude, just stop being so emotional and just chill out and see if it's good. That's the way I see it. Daima's not going to be that long. We'll see how good it is. Anyways, we're going to close out with that. I think that's the last question. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to plug? Go for it.
Well, you already plugged me, but I'll plug it again. Yeah, please check me out. It's youtube.com/MrFusion. You can see my name on the screen right there. Again, I got tons of videos, about 350 right now. And yeah, hopefully we'll have a good old fun, happy time. So thanks for letting me talk to all you guys today. I had a lot of fun.
No, thanks for spending 2.5 hours with me, bro. These are usually 2 hours, hour and a half, 2 hours. They're not going to go past 2.5, but I really appreciate it. I hope that the people, your audience and mine, liked it, and we'll do it again sometime. Maybe you can come back after Daima, and then we can kind of circle around and say, hey, of course, we're not going to spoil all your thoughts, because I'm hoping for a Daima dissection someday, maybe further down the road when some time has passed. Because, like, the thing is about media, too, is time changes how we view things. You know, like, I made this comment about Joker 2. When I finished, Joker 2 was not a very good film, but when I got done watching it, I said, you know, I think in time, people are going to start thinking this is a genius film. Quentin Tarantino comes out and says, oh, no, this movie's brilliant. And I'm just thinking, I told you. There's always somebody, because I knew what he was going for in that film, in the second Joker film. And it's very artistic and very, like, thought-provoking. It's about mental health and about toxic relationships. They take the Joker and Harley Quinn characters. It's not how they were in Batman the Animated Series. It's like a more of a realistic version of them where they both got mental illness issues. If you separate the comic book and look at it as like a movie, it's got issues still, but, like, Todd Phillips was saying something, and I just knew, I'm like, people are going to like it. So I think with Daima and with other things Dragon Ball, people will come around on it. I mean, let's not forget when Broly was first announced, people had a damn heart attack. Like, oh my God, Toriyama's bringing back Broly. It's going to be horrible. And then we see how he got rewritten. Everybody's like, oh, this is great. It's amazing. Let's wait and see. One last question for you. I've been waiting since I first booked this with you. Dragon Ball Daima is like a JRPG. You have done Final Fantasy memoirs on your channel.
Memories.
Well, memory, you know what I mean. It's the same thing. When the fuck are you going to play Dragon Quest?
I don't know. I knew you were going to do this in public.
I've been waiting.
I don't know. I am at that point where Final Fantasy Memories has been on hold for the past few years because I've been sitting on Final Fantasy X for so long, where it's just like I'm kind of at that point in my life where I'm struggling to really find the time for really big RPGs. Like, I'll sit down with a Zelda game. I've played Ocarina of Time so many times in the past several years. It's like I can finish that in a couple of weeks, you know? But it takes me months to do a Final Fantasy, and so I don't know. It's hard for me to find room in my life. I see that.
Here's the thing though. I will say this: Dragon Quest 1, very short. It was a experimental title. 2, also not that long. 3 is the first one where it's like, okay, now we're in. You know, that's about 30 hours, so it's still not that long. But I will tell you, the recent one, 11, we're looking at 100+ hours. So I would not suggest you dive into that unless you really like the first 3, but maybe someday I'll get you over. It's Toriyama, it's Yuji Horii. So this guy says it's Chrono Trigger really good. I don't know. Chrono Trigger has the Final Fantasy guys, the Dragon Quest guys, and Toriyama's in the middle. Yeah, I would say it's pretty good. Chrono Trigger is in the debate for best game of all time. You play Chrono Trigger, right?
I have. It's been about 20 years though, and I got to go back to it again. But yeah, I do have. It's hard. It's hard at this point in my life to sell me on it's 70, 80, 100 hours. Like, no, that's gonna scare me off. Same thing when people are like, you should cover One Piece dissection. I'm like, nope, it's too long. I don't. I can't do that. No.
Wait a minute. No, you know what? I got one more for you then. Sailor Moon dissection. I want you to talk about the manga. I want you to compare it to the anime and Sailor Moon and Eternal. The remake was called Eternal, right? The recent one.
There was the Crystal series, and then
Crystal.
Cosmos
Eternals are and not pretty. You've already done Pretty Guardian, but I mean, yeah. Is Sailor Moon dissection going to come? They're both Toei. They were out around the same time.
We'll see.
I hope so. I mean, that you'll probably be able to get an audience on that more than sitcoms, even though I want the sitcom videos. Anyways, we're out, y'all. Have a good one. Take care. Click the Mystery Fusion video in the comments or the link down below. Have a good one. See you soon. I'll see you tomorrow, actually, because I got a video coming out tomorrow. Peace.